In a distant world where spirits fill every part of life, there's a young man who can talk to these spirits. Because of his special skills, he joined a team of 5 heroes, and together they took down the Demon King. The person who can do this amazing thing is known as Universe. From above, you could see the breathtaking and enchanting kingdom of fools. In the very heart of it all, a grand castle rose tall and proud. This stunning building was more than just beautiful, it represented the entire kingdom's spirit and strength. The dark-haired man looked surprised and started asking questions, using lots of hand gestures. He wanted to know what was going on and what had caused his colleagues to act so strangely. The brave hero who defeated the Demon King stared at him with a strong, determined gaze. Behind the hero stood the loyal team, each one playing a crucial role in this tough fight. A tough and intimidating man in thick armor told everyone in a firm voice that he wasn't their ally. He was just the guy in charge of all the magical gadgets. A young blonde girl, busy fixing her fresh lipstick, agreed with the rude comment. She said the guy never talked to anyone while hiking and always kept to himself. Another woman from the team spoke up too. She said that Universe acted like he was better than everyone because of his special talent. Her look was even more serious and intense than the knight's. The man, feeling really awkward, started to stutter because he was nervous. He tried to explain that he just didn't know how to talk to people, but he was doing his best to do his job. The hero gave a calm smile and said he had no idea what the Universe was talking about. His eyes showed a clear sense of pride, and it was obvious he didn't like the person in front of him. This was becoming more and more clear. Universe stopped in shock. He couldn't believe what his teammates were saying. The insults just kept coming. They even questioned why he thought he was useful to the team since, in their eyes, he hadn't done anything remarkable. The man was totally lost and asked, what about his magic horse? That horse had a spirit inside it. The hero just rolled his eyes, making it clear he was hiding something. You could tell by his look that he was up to no good. The fair-haired young man walked confidently up to the horse beside him, head held high. Smiling, he opened his arms and said, anyone can do this with a little help. As he walked up to the magical horse, he angrily kicked it and called it worthless. No one, especially his teammates, expected him to act so rude and disrespectful. The man excitedly ran to his amazing invention, calling out its name as loud as he could. Feeling a mix of excitement and uncertainty, he turned to the savior of this world and politely asked to put an end to all teasing and jokes. Without thinking, the boy rested his hand on the girl's forearm. She was dressed almost like a nun. Noticing this, she looked down at his hand with clear annoyance, showing she didn't like what he'd done. And in the blink of an eye, she didn't hesitate. She swung fast and hit him right between the legs, making him double over in sudden, intense pain. The boy doubled over in pain, clutching his legs and dropping to his knees. The pain was so intense he couldn't even think about standing up. Meanwhile, the girl glared at him and spat out a harsh insult. She had already warned him not to touch her. The girl really disliked it when someone she wasn't comfortable with tried to get close. You could easily see her anger and discomfort just by looking at her face. The man who couldn't stand up reached out to the horse under the savior's foot and asked if trans people were accepted. The hero just smiled calmly, feeling nothing special, and pointed out the obvious. Universe only cared about himself, not the rest of the team. To the blonde, this was just plain wrong and totally unacceptable. Suddenly, his expression twisted as a new idea popped into his mind. Lifting his chin with a smug look, he told the man not to worry. He'd get fixed up too, just like this guy. Universe woke up late in the evening, finding himself bruised and sore on top of a messy pile of trash. Plastic bags, buckets, old boards, and other junk all around him. When the young man opened his eyes, the first thing he noticed was the gray rain clouds spreading across the sky. It felt like even the weather was against him that day. The guy put his hand over his face, clearly frustrated and angry. It looked like he was about to cry, just like a little kid. He realized that in the hero team, everyone had a special part to play. The hero must prove himself worthy to become the next king and win the heart of the princess. The brave warrior needs to rise as the nation's commander. The priestess should earn her place as a respected saint, and the young sorceress must master her magic to become a great sage. He never truly understood how much power the universe held, not even himself. Later on, he found a job in the Department of Research and Maintenance of Magical Devices. The guy was busy studying magic. All around him were books, strange tools, bottles, and colorful liquids, each one meant for something special. The guy gave Trans a pat on the side and cheerfully said he'd finally fixed him, so soon he'd be running as good as new. The others at work turned to look, surprised. They just didn't get why he talked to the machine like that. A young man walked alone down the hallway, lost in his own thoughts and not noticing anyone around him. He clutched a folder of papers tightly, as if it held something very important. As he walked down the hallway, something on the wall caught his eye and made him stop to check it out more closely. There was a bulletin board on the wall. At first, it looked pretty ordinary, but right in the middle, there was a huge poster showing the white-haired hero who had just defied the universe. The guy smiled when he saw the poster, acting like everything was normal. Then he remembered Typhon and wondered how she was. He found out she was getting married. The young man thought to himself that he would visit the girl today if he found some free time, and kept walking. Suddenly, one of his coworkers called out to him, saying that the boss wanted to see him. When the guy walked into the boss's office, the boss barely looked up from his reading. Without putting down his paper, he quickly told the guy he was fired. The boy stopped completely, feeling like his feet had fallen into a deep hole. He was truly shocked, as he never expected something like this to happen. Universe wanted to know why Swan made that choice. The boss turned away, settled back in his chair, and said the guy was just weird. He would talk to machines while fixing them, and it was really off-putting. He tried to explain, but stumbled over his words, struggling to describe the spirit living inside the magical device. Gutswin didn't even let the young man finish speaking. He interrupted, asking why the young man couldn't talk louder and clearer. The boss was already fed up with hearing him mumble, and the other workers often said the world felt unfriendly. The man made it very clear that he wasn't interested in listening at all. Still, the other guy kept trying to get his point across, because he really cared about keeping his job. Gatswin wouldn't let the young man speak, and kept interrupting him again and again. While talking, he mentioned that he would erase the universe's name from the devices he built and put his own name there instead. Universes and devices were really popular with customers, so thanks to his work, Gatswin became highly respected. The man made a face, then said he was going to become an official. He apologized, but it didn't sound very sincere, almost like he was making fun of us. Still, he thanked everyone for their hard work. The sun was bright and kids walked down the street with big smiles. Adults were everywhere too, some taking in the nice day, others in a hurry with their own tasks. But for Universe, the sunny weather didn't matter. He felt down and dragged his feet slowly. He let out a deep breath, feeling the stress melt away, and started thinking about where he could find a new job that would really fit his skills and what he wanted. Suddenly, he overheard two girls rushing by, excitedly chatting about how the Wind Spirit Princess was finally marrying the hero who defeated the Demon King today. The young man suddenly remembered his thoughts from earlier in the hallway. He had totally forgotten that he was supposed to stop by Typhon's wedding. The ceremony was held outdoors, under a beautiful sunny sky. The weather was perfect, and crowds of people gathered to witness the wedding between the hero and the princess, who was known as the Spirit of the Wind. The square, sitting on top of a hill, had only a few important guests mingling about. In the center stood an arch and a bell. The Wind Spirit looked a bit lost and seemed troubled by everything going on. The universe wrapped itself in a dark cloak, trying to blend in and not attract any attention. He stood still, captivated by the sight of the bride. Typhona looked truly stunning in her dress. The man smiled as he watched the lovely ceremony, truly hoping with all his heart that the princess at the center of it all would be completely happy. The girl wearing a scarf, who was part of the hero squad, spoke up confidently. She announced that today there would be a wedding between the princess, the Wind Spirit, and the hero who saved their world. Universe did his best to stay positive and not let negative feelings take over. Still, it was clear that troubling thoughts kept bothering him, making it hard for him to feel calm. The spirits in our world are truly kind, and they genuinely enjoy helping people whenever they can. For them, supporting someone is very important, and it even feels like a big honor when they can pledge their loyalty to a person. However, the young man truly believed that no matter what happened, people should never think of themselves as better than the spirits, especially when those spirits had promised their loyalty to him. The princess looked more and more upset, not even trying to hide how she felt. She just stared at the floor instead of looking at her fiancé. People saw that Typhon seemed anxious, but they didn't think much of it, since her husband was about to become a national hero. But then, something unusual caught her eye, and she looked toward the crowd. She smiled warmly at the guests and waved, making everyone feel comfortable and welcome. It looked like she was even happier to see her friends than she was about her soon-to-be husband. Suddenly, she stopped in surprise. Her face lit up with shock, as if something unexpected had completely pulled her out of her sadness. Universe glanced at the princess and felt a bit awkward. For a moment, he thought their eyes met. The Wind Spirit stepped up to the edge and leaned forward, trying to see clearly into the crowd below. She blinked in surprise, hardly able to believe what she was seeing. Maybe her eyes were playing tricks on her. The man glanced around, curious to see what had caught the girl's attention. But when he saw that she was looking right at him, he suddenly felt warm inside. He smiled without thinking, and even though he felt shy, he gave her a small, friendly wave. Suddenly, a strong wind rushed through the square, sweeping people off their feet and flipping the hero high into the air. It felt like something huge was racing into space, breaking everything in its way with fierce winds. It was the princess herself. She dashed forward as fast as she could, almost floating above the ground, completely unaware of anything around her. As everyone stood there, shocked and confused, the universe suddenly realized in fear that the princess, the spirit of the wind, was heading straight for him. Not even his cloak could help him disappear into the crowd or keep people from noticing him. Tears gently slid down the girl's soft cheeks, leaving a wet trail as they moved. When they reached her chin, a strong wind swept them away. The girl, whose cheeks were softly blushing, was already very close to reaching her dream. The confused man, having no idea what was going on, quickly opened his arms to catch the princess as she came rushing toward him, now just a meter away. She was so happy that she jumped into the young man's arms with so much excitement, she almost knocked him over. Typhon's world was full of excitement, as sudden gusts of wind swept people off their feet, showing off the unstoppable force and sheer greatness of nature. She stopped crying for a moment and asked, "If it's really you, how are you alive?" The young man looked at her in confusion, completely lost as to why she would think something like that. But the wind spirit said the hero had told her the universe vanished during their adventure. At the same time, the princess's future husband was lying on the ceremonial square, stunned and unable to believe what had just happened. Typhon, with tears in her eyes, said that if the universe was really alive, then getting married just didn't make sense to her anymore. Her emotions were overwhelming, and she couldn't settle down. The wind around her picked up, as if it was mirroring how she felt inside. The young man saw it too. Strong winds were so powerful that they swept away everything in their path, not just light decorations and bushes, but even the guards themselves. While everyone stood around confused, unable to figure out what was going on, the princess gently took the universe by the hand and said that none of this really mattered. She gently took his hands, gazed into his eyes with hope, and asked if he wanted to escape with her, leaving everything behind to start a new life full of excitement and endless possibilities. The wind spirit didn't wait for a reply. With strong determination, she grabbed the young man and pulled him aside, not wasting a second. There was no time to hesitate. The guards were already chasing after them, ready to capture them both. Typhon, filled with determination, scooped up Universe in her arms and quickly ran away from the wedding. Universe was shocked and confused, holding onto Typhon's shoulders, not sure what was going on. His face was full of confusion as he tried to make sense of what was going on, while the guests and the savior of the world sat together on the floor, all trying to understand what had just happened. The hero looked at his bride as flower petals kept swirling in the air. Suddenly, he felt a burst of anger. His eyes grew wide and red veins showed up, almost like tiny cracks. He clenched his jaw tightly, clearly wanting to speak but holding back. Overwhelmed by sadness and anger, he loudly yelled at the world, letting out all his frustration. He waved his hand at the guests in the square and told them to seize the strangest girl in the universe. The spirits were shocked by his words. How could he speak so rudely? One of the spirits, overwhelmed by the situation, shouted the hero's name over and over, desperately hoping he would come back. Breben looked around, unsure of what he was supposed to do, but the spirit made it clear he couldn't just brush off what the young man had said about his bride. As Universe and Typhon rushed into the city streets, they suddenly found themselves in front of Braben's wedding carriage. Typhon stopped in his tracks, staring at the carriage and especially noticing the sign on its roof. But as they moved closer to the device Typhon had discovered, Universe realized something surprising. The horse attached to the machine was actually his own creation, and it was also the boy's friend, Trance. As Typhon got into the carriage, Universe gently patted his friend. The girl looked surprised and asked how he knew this horse and if they had met before. The boy nodded and said this was his very first magical invention. Trance had been with the heroes group from the very start until they defeated the Demon King. The girl was amazed, but she also saw that the horse had a different name engraved on it. The magical horse had a message on it saying it was made by Gatsun, the former leader of the universe. The guy became upset. It was strange, since this was his own idea, but it obviously didn't cheer him up. Meanwhile, the girl pulled him away from the horse and told him to sit down quickly as well. The boys jumped into the cart and hurried away, wanting to get as far as they could from the place where they felt unsafe. Even though the horse had magical powers, it behaved just like any other regular horse. Its hooves made the same clopping noise you'd hear from any normal horse walking on the ground. Meanwhile, Universe was wondering why the horse wasn't talking. Maybe someone just turned off its voice. He promised his friend that he'd repair the horse and remove that awful mark. Behind the couple, knights on horseback were charging ahead as fast as they could. They were right on the heels of the carriage, where the princess and the universe were sitting. As the guards started closing in on the cart, Typhon quickly called out to the guy. but it was clear that the guy had already realized the trouble they were in and didn't need any explanation. The girl, visibly upset and frustrated, struggled to hold back her tears. She blurted out that things were moving so quickly, they might be able to catch up soon. The young man couldn't figure out what was happening. Trans was built from the universe's finest parts, so it should have been much faster. Suddenly, he glanced over at the girl, who looked confused as she stared ahead. Suddenly, he understood that trance is powered by earth spirits, but Typhon controls the wind. Since wind and earth are completely different elements, the trance wouldn't work as strongly as usual. The girl told the universe she understood, but there was no time to waste thinking, because one of the guards riding the horse-drawn carriage was already catching up to the princess. Typhon saw what was happening and unleashed a powerful gust of wind. The force was like a giant tornado, pulling everything away in its path. Sadly, it seemed there was no way the guard could escape this unstoppable storm. He and his cart suddenly flipped over, shouting in shock. The girl quickly tossed the reins to the young man, who luckily grabbed them just in time. But instead of trying to control the horse from the cart like most people would, the young man quickly jumped right onto the horse's back. Universe leaned close to the horse, gently praising him for his hard work. Then he spoke to the earth spirits within the horse, asking them to help by following his instructions. Suddenly, quiet and strange voices seemed to come from deep inside the horse, reaching out into the world around. These were earth spirits who, after hearing a voice they recognized, chose to answer. Tiny, gnome-like creatures rushed out happily to greet them, showing just how excited they were to see their dear old friend again. They easily climbed onto the horse's back, not missing a chance to complain loudly about how tired they felt. After all, their so-called hero was always dragging them into adventures. The spirits of the land felt inspired and determined after meeting their master. They wanted to prove their true abilities, so they vanished to prepare. Suddenly, the horse sped up like never before, almost as if it had transformed into a whole new animal. The cart behind it kicked up thick clouds of dust and whipped up strong winds, clearing everything out of its way. Typhon gripped the chair tightly, her hands fidgeting as she tried to shout with excitement, telling everyone they were speeding up too much. Suddenly, a group of guards showed up in carts on the road ahead, trying to block the boys from getting through. But the magical horse didn't slow down. It trusted its own power and raced straight ahead, determined to break through. He hit the enemy so hard that both the soldiers and their horses were sent flying several meters through the air before crashing down to the ground. Because the force was so strong, the carriage carrying Typhon was lifted up into the air, and even Universe, who was riding his horse nearby, was also picked up off the ground. They touched down and kept racing ahead, moving just as fast. The princess and the boy held on tightly, grabbing whatever they could to stay in place. Typhon was bursting with happiness, waving her hands in the air and cheering with excitement. She described how incredible and amazing everything was and urged the horse to run even faster. She pressed the button by mistake and didn't even realize she'd started a machine. Suddenly, a bright sign about the princess marrying Raven rose up, and then something exploded from a pipe behind it, sending pieces flying everywhere. Beautiful flower petals softly floated down around Typhon, filling the universe with a magical feeling. In that moment, everyone couldn't help but look up in awe, amazed by the stunning scene above them. But that wasn't everything. Pretty gadgets tied to ribbons tumbled out from the storage behind their carriage. When they landed, they made a bright, cheerful musical sound. From the outside, it looked quite unusual. Typhon, the wind spirit, was sitting in the carriage, while Universe rode the horse. The carriage hurried forward, surrounded by flower petals and lovely music. Passengers from nearby streets started to see this amazing scene happening right in front of them. Even people who hadn't noticed at first soon turned around, drawn in by the beautiful music they were hearing. They stayed where they were, too nervous to get closer, and talked quietly about what they saw. Right away, they knew this was the wedding carriage for the hero and the spirit princess. But what really surprised them was that the person riding the horse wasn't the hero. It was a young man they didn't recognize. The couple zoomed by a busy street, catching the attention of everyone around. But Typhon didn't mind at all. She felt pure joy, like a kid having fun, and thought the whole thing was hilarious. Still, people sometimes paid the price for their curiosity. When the carriage sped by, powerful gusts of wind followed, knocking some onlookers right off their feet. iPhone kept celebrating, her joy lighting up the room with positive energy, while Universe just gave her a gentle smile, happy to see her in such a good mood. Suddenly, the Earth Spirit started making changes to the wedding sign inside its beautiful, carved frame. The Universe noticed and watched curiously, wondering what the spirits were up to. Happy with what they created, the Earth Spirits proudly shared their work with the whole universe. Soon, a sign appeared, calling it the universe's love carriage for all friends. The proud spirit stood tall in front of Brabin, looking him straight in the eye, and firmly asked why he had spoken such harsh and disrespectful words before. He even repeated the hero's rude comment to their princess, as if he was angry and wanted to make sure he'd heard it right. His voice showed he couldn't believe something like that had actually happened. He sharply scolded Breben and firmly said he wouldn't let anyone call the princess, the spirit of the wind, that name. Even for a famous hero like Breben, it just wasn't acceptable. The hero frowned and clicked his tongue, clearly annoyed by these comments. He didn't like being spoken to this way and thought the whole situation was wrong. To him, these spirits weren't even people, so he didn't feel any respect for them. He turned around and, as he was leaving, said, "Let's stop worrying about this. We should focus on finding a way to catch that creature and take control of the universe as soon as we can." But the wind spirit didn't calm down. He kept asking who they had to catch if it wasn't the universe. Breben looked annoyed that this guy just wouldn't give up. Then he added, wasn't it the hero who claimed the universe was already gone? The young man stood still, silent, just listening to the spirit without looking at him. He turned halfway and, with no respect at all, mocked the spirit by mumbling and rolling his eyes. But the guy didn't even notice him. He was already rushing over to the other spirits, happily saying how great it was to see the universe. Breben stood with his hands on his hips, lifted his chin, and asked why they were even talking about strange creatures. He believed that all the awful people in this world are called universe, and he found that name to be the most terrible of all. The spirits immediately looked at Breben, as if someone had given them an order. You could see a mix of confusion on their faces, and their eyes were filled with anger, making them look truly scary. They quickly confronted the hero, demanding to know who else he thought was disgusting and how he could insult their friend. The guy was clearly caught off guard. He raised his hands defensively, searching for words to calm everyone down. The spirit of the wind, burning with anger and resolve, let out a furious cry. Typhon had agreed to marry Breben, believing it was fate's demand, especially after many lost their lives in the journey. But now the truth is out. They had all been deceived from the very start. He promised they would look into things carefully, and from now on, they wouldn't trust the hero anymore. Breben's face twisted with anger and confusion, wondering why they even got involved in this universe in the first place. The spirits left the square and told Breben that if the universe was truly alive, he should get ready for anything. Breben stood there alone, still surprised by what he had just seen. After a while, Typhon and her friend managed to escape by steering into the forest. The guy stopped, catching his breath, while the girl hopped off the carriage with a bright, cheerful energy. The spirits of the earth started crying with joy. They were so happy to see their master alive because, like everyone else, they believed he was gone. The universe gently patted one of the spirits on the head and thanked him for his help. Typhon saw this moment and felt happy too, giving a warm and satisfied smile. However, the girl watched curiously as the young man gently touched the earth spirits. It seemed like she wanted her friend to do the same for her, but she was too shy to ask. The guy noticed what she wanted by the way she looked at him. He gently placed his hand on her head and thanked the spirit of the wind. The princess couldn't help but smile happily, her unusual ears twitching with delight. Universe smiled when he saw this, but then he gently asked her if she was really sure that running away from the wedding was the right thing to do. The girl puffed up her cheeks and turned her head, saying she had already made up her mind. She didn't run away with someone else. She ran away with the whole universe. If only the young man knew how lost she felt after hearing he was gone. The princess lowered her head, her cheeks turning pink with embarrassment. She hesitated, stumbling over her words as she tried to confess her love for universe, but even though it was hard for her, she finally managed to say it. The young man smiled at the girl, as if he wasn't sure what she meant, and told her he loved her too. The girl's cheeks turned bright red, and she was so shocked by his response that she screamed. Now the earth spirits glanced at the boy, as if hoping he would say something to them too. Universe understood what they wanted just by looking at their faces, so he told the spirits that he loved them as well. Typhon watched the boy, feeling upset and jealous. She blushed again and joked that the universe was silly, but her feelings were too strong to hide. Upset with the guy, she lifted her fist as if to hit him. The guy quickly put up his hands, surprised and trying to protect himself. But then, out of nowhere, the girl quickly grabbed his shirt collar and leaned closer to him. Tears filled her eyes as she honestly said how relieved she was that universe had survived. The young man, his eyes gentle and kind, let the lovely princess snuggle close. He could feel her trust and warmth, and once again, he thanked her from the bottom of his heart. When Typhon finally settled down on a stump, the universe asked him what his next move would be. The girl didn't seem to have any suggestions either, so she turned to the guy and asked what he wanted to do. He answered that he wanted to fix Trans first because he wasn't doing well at the moment. Universe ran his hand over the engraving on the horse and realized that to remove it, he would have to travel to the land of the water spirits, known as Concantivere. Since it was carved by powerful fire spirits, only an equally strong water spirit could erase it. Typhon bounced with excitement and said she wanted to go with the boy. He double-checked if she was really sure about not going back home, but the princess explained that the wind spirits were everywhere, so her homeland would soon know where she was anyway. The girl slowly walked up to the young man and asked if he would take her with him. He smiled and said he could never say no to what she wanted. The princess lifted her fist into the air, full of excitement and hope, and called out that the decision was made. Their adventure was beginning, and their first stop would be the land of the water spirits. She felt ready to take on anything. The man wearing gloves looked through some papers. When he didn't like what he saw, he crumpled one up in frustration, almost as if blaming the paper for his troubles. Brainban laughed with a wicked grin, telling himself he'd capture the whole universe and make everyone bow to him. Maybe the humiliation drove him crazy, or perhaps he's always been this way. Typhon leaned forward with a warm smile, clearly full of kindness. She thanked the earth spirits, saying how happy she was to finally meet them and how much she admired them. The earth spirits were clearly uneasy when the wind princess spoke to them. Even though they were scared, they managed to give her a shy little greeting. Universe helped the boys relax. He looked at Typhon and said that if the girl was coming with him, it was important for her to get along with all the spirits, not just the ones from her own element. Then he pointed forward with a serious look and clearly said, "These are my conditions." The girl quickly nodded and promised she accepted them. She said everything would be fine and they could start their journey right away. But the universe seemed to tell her to slow down a bit. The girl glanced at the boy, surprised, as she couldn't figure out what was stopping them from leaving this time. The young man told Typhon she should change her clothes first because her wedding dress would make her stand out and get a lot of unwanted attention. The girl said yes and quickly jumped into the carriage to get changed. She was so excited to start the trip that she didn't want to waste a single moment. The guy stood in shock, amazed by all the noise the girl made while changing clothes. It sounded like she was about to tear the whole train car apart. Universe X was ready to see what else needed to be done before they set off, but Typhon suddenly shouted his name, grabbing his attention. The princess, now dressed in her new clothes, struck a pose for everyone to see, looking very happy with herself. She gave the guy a playful wink and a big smile, clearly hoping he'd be impressed. But what really grabbed Universe's attention was the magical bracelet on the princess's wrist. He wondered if he was right. Was she still wearing the same bracelet he remembered? Typhoon started looking at her bracelet and explained that she always wears it because the universe itself gave it to her. The guy smiled, clearly happy to hear this, but noticed that she seemed a bit uneasy, like she wanted to say something important. The girl put her hands together and, after showing off her outfit, asked the guy once more what he thought of her look. She really hoped to hear something nice from someone who mattered to her. The young man noticed how beautiful the princess looked in her new outfit, and he told her so. Hearing this, the princess smiled brightly at him, clearly delighted by his compliment. The girl admitted she felt really nervous since it was her first time trying this style of clothing, but the guy's reassuring words seemed to calm her down. The guy smiled and said he had never seen her dressed like this before. The princess looked away, a bit shy, and confessed that she wanted the young man to get to know every part of who she really was on this journey. Suddenly, she waved her hand in front of the guy and pointed at the carriage, asking if he wanted to put on something else since there were still lots of clothes inside. The universe considered what the princess had just said. The couple stepped into the carriage and quickly realized it was far from normal. Universe sensed powerful magic at work. Inside, there was actually a huge room, much bigger than the carriage looked from the outside. He glanced around, surprised to see not just a single room, but an entire palace. The universe seemed puzzled by why he'd need so much space, like he was planning to have a honeymoon with 8 princesses at the same time. Just then, a girl waiting at the doorway called out to him. She opened the door and saw a large bedroom. After taking a moment to gather herself, Tiffin walked straight to the closet and opened it. Inside, she found it completely packed with all sorts of things. The closet in the room was packed with lots of fancy, expensive items that easily caught your eye because they looked so impressive and valuable. The wind spirit, excited and happy, looked at the boy with sparkling eyes and asked what he thought of the outfits, but the boy didn't seem interested at all, and with a blank expression, he asked her to stop. The couple stepped outside and started talking about how the carriage looked fine on the inside, but the outside really needed some work. They thought maybe they could cover it up with some boards, but wondered where they could find those. But the universe had already noticed all the trees nearby, and Typhon told everyone that the forest spirits would be happy to share them. The princess stood tall and tapped her chest, showing how brave and determined she was. She firmly asked for her request to be granted, explaining that the wind spirits are friends with the forest spirits. She picked up the sturdy axe, feeling confident and determined, and walked quickly towards the tall trees, hoping to ask them for help. But something didn't go as planned. After a brief talk with the forest spirits, Typhon, sadly holding an axe, slowly walked away toward the unknown. She kept her head down and seemed to lose all her energy and excitement. Typhon walked up to the man and warned him that their plan would fail because the spirits would suffer too much. He suggested they should give up now. The girl felt completely heartbroken. Universe followed the girl toward the trees, determined to find a way to talk things out. He thought there was a chance it might work, so he knew he had to at least give it a try. The young man paused by the closest tree, studying it closely as a gentle breeze rustled the leaves all around him. He smiled and looked up at the tall tree stretching its branches high, then greeted the forest spirits with respect, hoping they would show themselves and bless him. People could hear voices coming from inside the tree. It sounded like spirits were having a conversation, and they acted as if Mr. Universe was right there with them. The man wondered how the spirits knew who he was, but they said that every tree in this land already knew all about him. All the trees share a network of roots underground, which lets them send messages to each other. That's what a forest spirit explained when it appeared on a tree. Universe calmly explained what he needed. He felt a bit uneasy and admitted he wanted to chop wood, but didn't know how to do it without upsetting the spirits. The spirit of the forest happily stretched out its branch-like arms and, amazed, announced that the universe truly is as magical as people say. Sadly, most people don't even bother to ask for permission. They just chop down trees whenever they feel like it. The guy wondered if most people just couldn't see these spirits, and maybe Typhon wasn't really a special one in the eyes of the universe. The spirit of the forest said he is willing to share the voices of all the trees that people use for wood. The trees want people to know that they feel proud to be strong and useful, and they are glad to be helpful to humans in so many ways. They are happy to serve people through their wood. The axe, thanks to its sharp blade and perfect balance, sliced through the tough wood quickly and effortlessly, almost like it was just cutting paper. The boys set the log on the stump and got ready to chop it. Universe held the log steady, and Typhon, excited and confident, swung the axe to deliver a powerful hit. Then the boys and the earth spirits worked together to rebuild the carriage, attaching the new wooden boards to its frame. When the job was done, everyone was really happy, giving each other high fives. They were glad it was finally over and felt proud of what they had accomplished. Universe spoke up and said what everyone was thinking. He praised the work and called it excellent. She jumped up with excitement, raising her fist happily. At that moment, she looked like the happiest one there, maybe just because she was more expressive than anyone else, even more than the other spirits or the universe itself. The boy spotted some chains fixed to a wooden post in the corner of the carriage, and he looked at Typhona with surprise, asking her what they were for. The girl lifted her head, clearly showing she felt nothing but dislike and even disgust about the whole thing. She told her companion that when a servant spirit did something wrong, they were chained with this device to make them understand their mistake and feel sorry about it. Breben was thrilled by such an unusual idea. The young man firmly said it was awful that the hero could even consider doing something like that. While he spoke, Typhon paid close attention to the boy's opinion. She smiled with joy. It looked like this was exactly the answer she had hoped to hear from him, but Universe felt confused about why the girl was laughing at what he said. Did he really say something strange? The princess said that most people here think of spirits as unimportant, almost like they're nothing, but she's really glad the universe sees things differently. Smiling kindly, she looked at the young man. The guy also said that every life matters and is important, no matter what group or background someone comes from. The girl also mentioned that the guy showed respect to the forest spirits. She truly admired him and appreciated how kind and special he was. The wind spirit gave the universe her warmest, most beautiful smile, thanking him for valuing every spirit he had met on his journey. Her kind words touched him, and her warm smile made him glance away, a bit shy and embarrassed. He turned away a bit shyly and told the girl they should get going. She smiled brightly and happily told him to lead the way. If this magical horse was completely healthy, the trip would be done in less than a day. But after what happened to it while it was away from the universe, the guys will need at least 3 days to finish their journey. But the man also mentioned that it would take at least 3 days to get there, and that's only if nothing went wrong. Still, someone wearing armor was already waiting by the carriage. These knights were sent by Breben to bring back his fiancée and his old friend. The soldiers quickly informed their commanders where the carriage was heading. Typhon sensed that something wasn't right and tried to warn the universe, but he noticed her suspicion too. Just as they were nearing the border, a group of royal knights surrounded their carriage, determined to stop them from escaping. Typhon and Universe understood they had no choice but to push forward and fight, since there was no way to escape or avoid their enemies. Universe looked at his horse and asked for help to deal with the problem. He spoke to the earth spirits as well, telling them he was counting on their help. Right away, they sprang up and excitedly promised to assist. With their support, the carriage picked up speed, and the boys hurried on their way. The sun was shining brightly behind them, and soon, nights spent riding in horse-drawn carriages were just around the corner. As the group of guards came closer to the carriage, Typhon and Universe braced themselves and got ready to face them head-on. They smashed through the barrier with a thunderous crash, and as soon as they were free, the princess bravely climbed onto the roof and sent strong gusts of wind behind them to help give her friends a better chance to escape. The girl sat down and thanked the universe, cheering Trans on and telling him to move even faster. But then, the young man spotted something up ahead and stared into the distance, determined to find out what it was. A mysterious wall showed up right along the state border, blocking every way out. It blended perfectly with the rocky landscape, turning into stones and hills just like the ones you'd normally see in this area. It wasn't just an ordinary wall, it was a barrier made of sharp spears tied closely together. If anyone tried to break through, their horse could easily get hurt. Typhona looked anxious. She nervously explained that, sadly, Trans wouldn't be able to help them anymore. Suddenly, the young man had a clever idea. He looked at the wind spirit and asked if she could help fix the problem using her magic. He had to shout since the wind made it hard to hear him at high speed. The guy then suggested using the wind's strength to make the carriage float up into the air. The girl, surprised and a bit unsure of herself, softly said that she didn't think she could do it. But the universe wasn't ready to give up. He kept gently encouraging the girl to just give it a try, telling her he believed in her and was counting on her. Her cheeks turned a gentle pink after Universe's kind words, and she agreed to try, unable to say no to his sincere request. The girl let out a loud scream, cupping her hands over her mouth to make it echo farther. She called out to the other wind spirits, asking them to share their strength with her. The tiny lights drawn by the girl's shaky voice quickly flew in from every direction, gathering together and filling the area with a wonderful, glowing brightness. The princess gently reached out her hands, hoping to feel the helpful spirits who were there to guide and support her on her tough adventure. Typhona looked out at the universe, feeling frustrated. It almost seemed like she might cry because of everything that was going on. The girl couldn't hold back her feelings and shouted angrily that this wasn't nearly enough to finish such a tough job. But the guy didn't want to give up yet. He thought maybe if he brought all the wind spirits together, it could finally work. Then he lifted his index finger, as if he just got an idea. Universe said that if any wind spirits wanted to play, they could come and land on his finger. The guy used his gathering skill, a special power that spirit tamers have to attract spirits with just a raised finger. His desperate cry for help rose up from deep inside him and echoed all around. The offer from the universe was strong enough to reach several hundred meters, so even the spirits could notice it. At first, they stood quietly, not moving at all, hoping for a sign or some direction. But soon, one of the spirits spoke up, unable to handle the silence anymore, and asked if anyone else felt the universe reaching out to them. Then dozens, maybe even hundreds of spirits gather in one spot, all wondering the same thing. Was it truly the universe that called them there? Typhon and his friend gazed up in awe, watching the tiny lights drift down towards them when he called. But then, in the blink of an eye, the wind spirits not only gathered around the boy's finger, but also swirled around the startled princess. The young man was amazed by how many spirits showed up when he called. Quickly remembering his goal, he asked Typhon to carry on. The girl, a bit hurt and annoyed, puffed out her cheeks to show how she felt, but eventually agreed to the idea, though she wasn't very happy about it. She asked the spirits around them for help, explaining that they really needed to lift the cart they were riding on. Gentle, unseen spirits of the wind swirled all around the carriage, creating a mysterious and magical cloud. These enchanted breezes filled the air, bringing a sense of freedom and wonder. The team, excited and ready, started getting things ready for their flight. Just a few moments later, the carriage suddenly lifted off the ground, floating as if by magic, thanks to the mysterious and incredible powers of the spirits in this strange world. Suddenly, the entire carriage, along with the travelers, soared into the air. The barrier was gone, so nothing stopped them from leaving the kingdom. The soldiers chasing the boys looked up in shock. They didn't see this coming at all, but the carriage was already soaring high above them. As the boys soared over the barrier, the knights shouted loudly, almost cheering. It was the first time they had ever seen a whole carriage lift up and fly through the air. Typhon took in the stunning scenery, while Universe happily realized they had finally escaped their pursuers. Right then, the boy stopped in his tracks, feeling like something strange had just happened. It was as if he saw a quick flash in front of his eyes, making him pause and wonder if it really was just a random accident. Now it was obvious that the universe was paying attention. Typhon gently placed his hand over hers. The young man was confused and asked the princess why she acted that way. The girl turned red with embarrassment and wasn't sure how to explain her actions. Suddenly, she had a brilliant idea. Typhon warned her it was risky to stay, and she didn't want the universe to be in danger. When she admitted this, her cheeks turned red and she glanced aside, embarrassed. The guy smiled and told her he really appreciated it. Then he gently lifted her hand, still holding it firmly in his own. Typhona was overjoyed, her happiness shining like a kid unwrapping a long-awaited present. She couldn't stop smiling, and her face absolutely lit up with excitement. Universe gazed forward with pride, while Typhona just smiled, happy in that moment. She didn't care much about flying anymore. It was Universe holding her hand that mattered most, and even if there were no roads in the sky. The runaways looked out and saw endless space full of new chances and freedom waiting for them. Their carriage soared through the sky like a magical ship, quickly leaving the kingdom and all its troubles far behind. Meanwhile, inside the grand palace, important events were unfolding that could change the future of the whole kingdom. In a beautifully decorated hall, filled with elegant furniture and a sense of importance, a serious meeting was held to discuss the troubling disappearance of Typhon. The hero, who will soon be the new king, clenched his teeth and demanded to know why no one had captured either his bride or the kidnapper yet. The current Minister of Magic, who had taken charge, stepped forward to reassure everyone. He said there was nothing to fear because highly trained soldiers with advanced gear, designed by the minister himself, were guarding the border. Now all they could do was wait. Braden let out a deep breath, but you could still see the worry and frustration in his eyes. Suddenly, a soldier rushed into the office and reported that the carriage carrying princesses Typhon and Universe had crossed the border, and now the runaways were already far outside the kingdom. Gatswin jumped out of his chair in shock, completely surprised by the news, and hit the table without thinking because he couldn't hold back his feelings. He was amazed and asked how that could even happen. The knight, looking a bit embarrassed, said their carriage had just flown right over the new devices and all the guards below. But the Minister of Magic didn't believe him. He said there was no need to trick him, because everyone knows carriages can't fly. He even asked if the knight was under some kind of spell and making things up, but he was told, no, that's not true. Then the future king hit the table with his fist and said, God, this person just doesn't get it at all. Raben quickly figured out that Typhon had used wind magic to lift their carriage up into the sky. Gatswin quickly put his hand over his mouth, trying to gather his thoughts. The only thing he managed to say, with an awkward stutter, was something that sounded like he understood, though it was obvious the minister was actually quite confused. He put his hand on his chest and said everyone knew the magical horse pulling that carriage was created by the minister. Then, Braben claimed that Gatswin was totally useless for letting them escape and demanded to know what he planned to do about it. After a strange silence, the Minister of Magic admitted honestly that he hadn't meant anything special. He just wanted to say that the horse was an amazing animal. Brabant looked puzzled and didn't seem to understand. But he just laughed and said he was absolutely obsessed with hunting for zombies. Gatswin proposed spreading their pictures worldwide using flyers, so everyone would be searching for the leader of the universe, alive or dead. All Brabant would need to do is wait, and soon he'd finally get what he wanted, a chance to see Typhon again. The future king slammed his hand on the table, making Gatswin jump in fear, worried he was about to be punished for his bad suggestion. However, Brabant praised the minister with a big smile, saying the idea was absolutely brilliant. Gatswin let out a relieved sigh. He really wanted Brabant to like his ideas and support him, so he felt very nervous sharing them. They were already making wanted posters, and Brabant thought he would never feel more humiliated than when Princess Typhon escaped with the universe. He crossed his arms, confident that the problem would be solved soon. Feeling proud of his efforts, he couldn't help but smirk, though his smile looked a bit mischievous. The very next day, the streets were busy again, full of people carrying on with their daily lives. Brabant rode down the street in his carriage, eager to see how people would respond to the news about the search for Typhon's bride's kidnapper. The people were curious about the announcement, but something seemed off. Right beside Gatswin's poster, there was another one. The people were shocked when they saw the two posters. One was searching for Typhon in the universe, while the other wanted to catch the evil person who kidnapped the princess at her own wedding. Even the images on both ads looked nothing alike. The poster, which wasn't made by Breben or his team, showed a cheerful Typhona happily posing next to her friend. The imagined future king, called Frozen Horror, never saw this coming. People thought Breben was foolish and even made fun of him, calling him Kurr. But was any of this actually true? Even the newspaper writers didn't really know for sure. Everyone just guessed and discussed what they believed might be real. It looked like they decided the princess hadn't been kidnapped after all. She probably just left on her own, maybe to another world. Hearing this made the hero so angry, she could barely keep her cool. But the men kept talking. They said it was embarrassing to lose your bride like that. To them, Raven seemed weak since he couldn't even protect his own wife. The people couldn't stop laughing and joked that even they could do a better job than him. The women nearby looked at each other and laughed even harder. The hero cried out in shock. How could they insult him by calling him weak? The man stormed back to the palace and, bursting with anger, threw open the office door and shouted for Goth's leader. But when he arrived, a group of spirits supporting Typhon in the universe was already there waiting for him, not his minister. As soon as Breben walked in, the spirits quickly asked him to explain himself. They were holding posters that looked just like the ones displayed in the main square. They gathered around the hero and admitted they finally understood how he handled everything, since he knew all along that their friend universe was still alive. They also wanted to know what the message on the notice meant when it said to find alive or not. Of course, nobody calmed down because they realized Brabant wasn't a hero at all. He was just a liar. And that portrait of Princess Typhona everyone was talking about. It was actually a fake, just made by some guy named Worth. The Spirit King is sure to be angry because this young man clearly has no shame. If that happens, their alliance with Typhon will fall apart, and I'm curious to see what Brabant will do next. Burning with anger, Breben pointed at the spirits and shouted insults, telling them not to overreact and ruin their alliance over something so small. Then he let his feelings take over, stretched his arms wide, and joked that the universe had no shame at all, bursting into loud laughter. The hero lost control, shouting that if he wanted to, he could destroy the whole land of spirits in a heartbeat, and claimed he could bury them all together without any trouble. When they heard this, Princess Typhon's loyal defenders just quietly walked out, leaving the confused young man all by himself. He let out a relieved sigh and rolled his eyes, wishing he had done this from the start. It would have saved him from all those pointless talks. He did leave. He walked through the castle's long hallways and headed toward a door far away. When he walked in, he saw a dark office with a man wearing a crown sitting in the middle. The man told him he'd just gotten a letter from the world of spirits, saying that their partnership was now over. The man was caught off guard by how quickly things changed, so he just stood there while the king asked him to explain what was going on. Raben tried to defend himself, saying this was the punishment for the minister's arrogance and for all the spirits' wrongdoings. But the serious and quiet man cut Brabant off before he could finish, silencing the bold young man with a single word. He stood there looking lost, just like a young child who'd been scolded harshly, staring at his father with confusion, not sure what he'd done wrong. The king declared that with the demon lord gone, every nation now recognized their strength. The only thing left was to make the spirit nations surrender, and then their country would become a powerful empire, ruling the whole world. He said they couldn't afford to let this chance slip away. The king said he was ending his engagement to the spirit's daughter too. Breben glanced at his father, unsure how to comfort him or what to say. The king tightened his fist and said that if his child didn't agree, he had to fix the alliance right away or he'd throw his disappointing son out of the palace. Breben suddenly found himself standing outside his father's office. The heavy door shut behind him, almost like it was guarding something important, and he was left feeling confused and alone. His face showed both shock and disappointment. He couldn't understand why his father had just called him useless and pathetic. The hero stood in the middle of a group of spirits. They stared at him with cold, unfriendly eyes full of scorn. It was clear they didn't want him there at all, and his very presence seemed to bother them. The man lowered his head and bent forward, showing respect to those in front of him. This simple gesture also showed he was truly sorry and wanted to apologize. He managed to say that he was truly sorry and sincerely apologized for speaking so harshly and without thinking. Even though he was boiling with anger and sadness, he tried hard not to show it. All he could think about was making sure the universe wouldn't steal Princess Typhon away from him. He needed her more than anything. The spirits just laughed. One of them moved closer and said they all wanted to hear a real apology. The hero looked up, his face showing frustration. But then, remembering the situation, he forced himself to smile awkwardly, trying to hide his true feelings. He confidently said they had no right to expect a real apology from him when they couldn't even show him basic respect. They wanted honesty from him, but didn't even bother to show a little respect themselves. The spirits didn't like what he said at all. Right away, they started talking about how to take away his hero title. They also said he needed to apologize, and not just to them. The hero struggled to stay calm. Veins stood out on his face as he bit his lip, trying to hold back his emotions. In his mind, he wondered if they truly saw him as worthless, but he just couldn't bring himself to ask out loud. His hands shook as he knelt down, getting into the right position to give the apology that the spirit ministers expected. The young man who had collapsed on the floor promised he would bring the universe back to his homeland. He apologized sincerely and asked everyone not to end their alliance. The leader of the spirits noticed that Breben still didn't get it. He shouldn't be saying sorry to them, but instead, he needed to apologize to the universe and to Princess Typhon. Being told to apologize to the ones responsible for his troubles just made Breben even angrier. He lifted his head and promised that he would apologize to them once he went back home. He explained that saying sorry now wouldn't matter because they wouldn't be able to hear him, so it wouldn't change anything. One of the spirits explained that now would be a good time to apologize, and there was a way for the hero to share his message with them. More importantly, they wanted to make sure the hero truly meant everything he said. Clenching his teeth in anger, Breben realized everyone was just mocking him. The idea of apologizing to people like that felt unbearable. He couldn't stand the thought of lowering himself like that. He told himself they weren't around, and there was no way they could hear what he was saying. Then he finally asked the question that had been bothering him the most. If he apologized to the spirits, would the union stay strong? The minister, standing tall and confident, promised that unlike him, they always kept their word. Struggling to keep his anger in check, the young man admitted he was wrong. He promised he would never pressure Typhon again, and if she made a mistake, he wouldn't blame her. He gently asked her to come back. The spirits were stunned, amazed to learn something new about the connection between the princess and Breben. They realized there was still much they didn't know about their story. The guy suddenly realized he had said too much. Nervous, he bit his lip so hard that blood started to pour out, but the hero didn't even seem to notice. He kept speaking and asked him to come back, saying he'd made a mistake and wanted him to return to work. Then, to make it more convincing, he promised he would fire Gatsuin and make the guy a minister. The hero was clearly nervous. This was his first time ever making such an emotional apology. He tried to hold back his anger, but his eyes turned red, and tiny blood vessels popped, leaving noticeable red lines. Even though the hero tried to smile through his worry, the spirits gathered excitedly around the unusual device, chatting about how well it had worked. Feeling desperate, Breben pointed at the device and asked what it was. The spirit replied that it was a magical tool, able to send every spoken word straight out into the universe. The spirit also said that, unlike photos, this tool is perfect for capturing both motion and sound. At the same time, Braben's recorded apology was playing on the device. The spirits began to fade away, leaving the hero sitting alone on the floor, stunned by everything that just happened. Excitedly, they talked about asking a journalist friend to share the recording with people all over the world. Suddenly, the young man sprang to his feet and, acting like a wild animal, started making strange noises and growling as he charged at the spirits. Terrified, they quickly ran away from him. He caught the minister holding a magical device, and when asked about his intentions, the minister said he planned to destroy it. He was afraid that if others found out about it, his reputation would be ruined. The other spirits glared at the man with obvious dislike. They grabbed the device from him, surprised that he still dared to act so boldly, even in his situation. Breben, desperate to defend himself, insisted that they had only tricked him. The spirits left the sad hero and told him their alliance was back on track. Still, the hero was upset and begged them to delete the embarrassing video of his apology. When the spirits left, Breben dropped to the floor like a little kid, flailing his arms and legs, squirming, and shouting that they had to stop right now and take everything away. Meanwhile, the carriage carrying the runaways was already rolling through the lands of the Aswampu kingdom. Typhon excitedly pointed ahead, saying she could see a pond in the distance. The girl couldn't hide her excitement as she jumped up and down and eagerly showed her friend what she'd discovered. Just like a child, she stared in awe at the shimmering lake in front of them, while it seemed like the whole universe was smiling at their magical moment. He explained that Vampu is famous for its stunning ponds and lakes. It even has the biggest lake on Earth, so huge it almost feels like an ocean. When the girl heard about it, she got even more excited and said she absolutely wanted to see this incredible show. The universe realized that Typhon, being the princess of the wind spirits, has actually never traveled to any other countries. The young man said that even though it wasn't exactly on their route, they would still make a stop to check it out. The princess smiled widely, thanked the universe, and also expressed her gratitude to Trance for driving them. When they got there, they noticed a big poster catching the eyes of tourists. Behind it, the enormous lake stretched out, offering a breathtaking view. Typhon confidently walked toward it. People were dancing and enjoying themselves on the lakeshore. Some sipped on cocktails, while others cooked up a tasty dinner. Laughter and music filled the whole beach. The girl was surprised by how cool and refreshing it felt here. People in swimsuits walked past them, and there was a clear path to the lake right ahead. Still, Universe didn't feel the same excitement. He just wanted to leave as soon as possible. But he said nothing, just for Typhona's sake. With a bright smile and eager energy, the princess reached out her hand to the young man, inviting him to join her and make the most of the night, just like everyone else enjoying themselves there. Just as the boys were diving deeper into their adventure, a tough-looking man suddenly called out to them from behind, making them stop and turn around. The man wearing a hat and glasses took a serious puff of his cigar and told them not to rush. Instead, he wanted them to wait right where they were. Elaquat, the person responsible for the lake, greeted us and said the entry fee was 10,000 enda each. This price covered not just admission, but also a barbecue set and some extra items. Since there were two of us, he asked for a total of 20,000 enda. Universe and Typhon stopped in shock. Why is it so expensive? The guy wondered aloud. Looked up with a gentle smile and said, that's just what heroes have to pay. The universe seemed to stop. He remembered that hero prices meant everything related to heroes was shockingly expensive. The young man thought about how much it cost just to buy posters and signs with Brabant's face on them. The man wondered, isn't the universe old enough? Doesn't it have 20,000 enda? When no one replied, he let out a deep sigh. He offered a different deal that made the couple very uncomfortable. Locke said he would cut the price in half if they brought a girl in a swimsuit. If she looked pretty and stylish, he would even throw in a free gift. Princess Typhon had an idea. Her eyes lit up, and she faced the whole universe with confidence. The girl told him to wait for a moment, and quickly ran back to the carriage they had come in together. Eloquat and Universe waited patiently, and soon the princess showed up in front of them, saying sorry for making them wait. She confidently showed everyone her outfit, shyly. Now it was obvious she just rushed off to change into her swimsuit. The lake manager couldn't hide his delight at the sight, while her friend just stood there, stunned. The swimsuit fit her perfectly and really highlighted her shape. Loquat, moved to tears by the amazing view, gave 2 thumbs up and said it was truly awesome, so the others could go ahead and enjoy themselves. Typhon, feeling pleased, walked ahead with confidence, quietly humming a tune, while the young man followed behind, glancing around at his surroundings. As soon as they walked onto the beach, every man's eyes were drawn to the stunning Typhon, completely ignoring the person who was with her. They circled around her, throwing out questions nonstop. Was she here alone? Where was she from? Did she want to join them for some fun? One guy even chimed in, saying he heard that spirits like helping people, so he asked what she enjoyed doing the most. But the girl managed to escape and ran to hug Universe. Universe stood still, confused, not sure what was happening, as the girl told him he was the only one she cared about. He turned his eyes away, thinking that maybe he'd gone too far with what he said. Suddenly, he was surprised, and a bit shocked to see everyone shoot him a disapproving look before quickly spreading out along the beach. Typhon cheerfully hugged Universe's hand, holding him close. She felt proud of what she had shared with everyone. Universe himself let out a relieved sigh, happy that things just got a little easier for them. He suggested they keep going, and the happy girl smiled and agreed. She smiled kindly and told him that now that they were here, they should take a walk and enjoy the scenery together. The young man saw the guys still talking about them and pointing, so he nodded to the girl, and they calmly walked away together. When they arrived at the lake, Typhon's eyes lit up with wonder. She had never seen a place so beautiful before, and the stunning view took her breath away. The girl noticed it felt a bit cooler by the water, but it was still nice. Then Universe told her not to lean on him too much, or she might get dirty. The man said he was still in his work clothes, which smelled like oil. But the princess didn't feel embarrassed at all. She was confident that everything was going well, seeing it as a clear sign that the universe was working closely with the spirits. Feeling happy with herself, she chose to snuggle even nearer to her companion, who seemed shy and could only say her name softly. But all of a sudden, the girl's stomach made a loud growling sound, making it obvious that she was really hungry and needed something to eat. Typhon blushed and looked away, feeling a bit shy, but the guy just smiled and gently mentioned that her growling stomach showed they hadn't eaten since morning. Since they were already in the area, he suggested they try some barbecue. The girl nodded, and you could see she was eager to get something delicious to eat. The couple arrived at a spot with tables set up for making barbecue. They used a mix of ingredients called mazan, which included many different things. Typhon cheerfully said she had everything ready, while the guy set up the barbecue grill. As the coals started to glow, the man mentioned that he had also set up a grill, ready for cooking. He placed the food on the grill with confidence, and soon the delicious aroma of grilled meat filled the air. The food smelled so amazing that everyone at the nearby tables couldn't help but look over and stare. Grilled meat, fish, and shrimp sizzled over the fire, their juices dripping onto the hot coals and sending up delicious-smelling smoke into the air. The group sitting near the couple really wanted to try the delicious-looking food, but they didn't have the courage to ask. They held back because they didn't want to seem like they were begging. The universe handed Typhon a plate of food and told her to be careful. It was still really hot. Typhon was excited to try it and thanked the guy for the delicious meal. She picked up a bite-sized piece of meat with her fork. It was still steaming hot, showing it had just come off the stove, and when she pressed it, juicy liquid dripped out and even spilled onto the floor, proving it was perfectly cooked. Typhon lifted the piece of meat to her mouth and took a bite. She was delighted by the taste, and her cheeks turned pink from the warmth of the food. Enjoying every moment, Typhon slowly savored the meat, holding it in her teeth and drawing out the pleasure of eating. When the girl finished eating, her eyes lit up with pure delight as she said it tasted amazing. A little drool formed at the corner of her mouth, and it almost looked like stars were sparkling around her. Typhono excitedly turned to Universe, her eyes shining, and exclaimed that this was the tastiest food she'd ever had. Universe looked a bit embarrassed and said she was probably exaggerating. Smiling, he handed Typhona another helping, encouraging her to try more. Typhona stared at the plate, amazed by what she saw. Typhon brought over some seafood and pointed out how big the shrimp were. She tried some shellfish next and loved how tender it was. In the end, she smiled happily and said it was delicious, then playfully licked her fork. Other people on the beach saw the girls enjoying their meal and wished they could taste it too. The universe took notice, realizing that everyone wanted to create the perfect barbecue just like them. The man kept grilling the seafood, reminding himself that it needed to cook over hot coals, not direct flames, but he knew there was something even more important on his mind. The universe replied, saying it was thanks to the fire and forest spirits that they enjoyed the most amazing barbecue ever. It thanked everyone for their teamwork. The boys stepped back, waiting for the forest and fire spirits to speak. The fire spirit spoke first, saying people often believe they can create fire by themselves, and she was tired of their ignorance. She asked the forest spirit if she agreed. The forest spirit answered yes, and said it would be great to have another barbecue with Mr. Universe. The fire spirit agreed, but said it wouldn't be possible without him. The guy explained that by joining the powers of different spirits together, a person could become stronger and learn new skills. For example, by mixing the spirit of fire with the spirit of the forest, you could enjoy warmth and delicious food. The universe suggests that when you bring different spirits together, remember that some may not get along. It's best not to push them into anything they don't want. Instead, try asking them to work together. The man remembered asking the spirits for help with his spirit tamer abilities, and thanks to that, they were able to make peace, get along, and became close friends who couldn't be separated. The girl called out to the boy and asked him to open his mouth. He did, and she smiled as she gently fed him with a fork. Typhon said that since he had cooked the meal, she should serve it to him and wanted to know if it tasted good. While still eating, the guy just nodded to the girl in response. The man noticed the flavor was still unique. As he gazed up at the sky, he imagined that the moss on the lake tasted better than any steak he'd ever tried. Then, turning around, he spotted a poster behind him. The poster showed a man in a raincoat holding a fish. Next to him, some people stood nearby. Above the picture, there was a list showing the heaviest fish caught and their weights. The top fish weighed 70 kilograms. The guy felt like he was the one who took the photo. Typhon, holding a plate and a fork, called out to the universe, and the guy responded. The universe smiled and told her he was about to create a truly special gift just for her. The girl slowly stood up, still feeling dazed, and glanced at the guy. She asked him if the Masan was just her imagination. The universe replied that the Masan was real, but there is something even more amazing hidden in this lake. The man standing next to the heroes jokingly asked if they were really trying to catch a fish, and teased them about whether they could even do it. He warned that a Mazan bite could be deadly, and hinted that one of the guys was just trying to impress his friend. Friends then decided to make a bet on how the universe would end. One said he'd drown, while the other guessed he'd be bitten. The guys made a deal that whoever wins the argument gets Typhon, and everyone agreed. Even more people joined. The girl glared at them with frustration. Meanwhile, Universe quietly walked over to the lake and sat down by the water. The universe spoke while gazing into the water, saying it had been a while since they last met, and greeted the spirit. The young man asked if it was okay to share the mason again, just like before. The water started moving as the guy spoke. A round face slowly appeared above the water. It was the lake's spirit. He gave the boy a warm, friendly smile. The spirit of the lake wondered if the universe had called him, and he discovered it had. The spirit said he was finally here. The boy smiled at the spirit as he looked at him. The spirit of the lake told the man that he had made a special meal for him, but warned that the fish in it was dangerous and that the hero should not go near it. The spirit added that if the man snapped his fingers, the meal would show up. The man said he understood. The man began walking away from the lake, and people in the distance called out, asking if he was quitting. The universe watched, smiling, as if everything was going exactly as planned. Suddenly, air bubbles rose to the surface of the lake. The calm water started to churn, swirling quickly in a big circle. A giant fish splashed out of the water. Universe, the mason, simply smiled and felt happy about the catch. Typhon cheered, excited to have something new to eat, but the rest of the group stared in shock at the huge fish. A giant warrior, almost 1.5 times the size of a normal man, suddenly emerged from the water and landed on the shore in front of the hero. The people behind him gasped in shock and started asking questions. The people behind him started pointing and asking how he managed to catch such a big fish just by snapping his fingers. They even made fun of his unusual fishing style. The guy ignored them, but in his mind he thought, this catch is thanks to the help of the spirits. Typhon smiled, crossed her arms, and told the hero how impressive he was. As the guy grabbed the fish by its tail, the girl beside him started jumping with excitement. A group of young women in swimsuits hurried over to join the celebration. The girls gathered around the heroes, especially the guy, showering him with compliments and flirting. They said anyone who could catch such a giant mouse must be a good person, and they were clearly impressed. Typhon, however, looked at the girls with clear dislike and thought their behavior was silly. The guys weighed the moson they had caught and were amazed to see it was hundreds of kilograms. They joked that only a true hero could bring in such a huge catch. The younger ones started flattering the fisherman, telling him how impressed they were and pretending they always believed in him. But the fisherman knew they were just saying that to get on his good side, so he gave them a cold, disapproving look. The boys smiled and joked as they asked Universe to share with them too. The guys grabbed the fish with the knife and started pulling the mason closer, but Typhon saw what was happening and quickly told them to stop. The girl, clearly upset, pointed at them and demanded to know who said they could eat it. Typhoon frowned and yelled, asking what the universe had given her, then pointed at herself. One of the guys said the animal was too big for just 2 people and asked why they didn't all share it. But the girl said no and refused to let anyone else have it. The girl, clearly upset, reminded the boys how they had teased the universe before the fish was split. She demanded that they remember what they had said. The boys just looked at her, not understanding what she meant. The boys glanced away, avoiding Tiffin's eyes, feeling embarrassed and deep in thought. They knelt down in front of the heroes, apologized, and promised they wouldn't make the same mistake again. The girl spoke sharply for the hero, saying she didn't believe the men were being honest. She demanded that they apologize again, insisting they bow lower and in perfect sync. The guys quickly did exactly as she said. Typh frowned and said they wouldn't meet Amason until she got a real apology. The guy just smiled and laughed awkwardly. The girl lifted her hands and told them to say sorry again. Meanwhile, Universe watched from the side, curious about where Typhon had learned to be so strict. Now the poster showed a fresh image of Universe and Typhon, with a huge 100-kilogram moson standing front and center. The Universe was getting a horse carriage ready for the trip. The main character told Tiffany to go on ahead, and she agreed. Suddenly, someone called out to them, and Tiffany turned to see who it was. The young people from the beach thanked the heroes for an amazing time, saying goodbye and promising to share the story of the mysterious universe with everyone they meet. The heroes settled into the carriage and waved goodbye as their friends saw them off. The sun was starting to set. The universe started to think about why it only gave people the skin of the fish. Typhon, looking annoyed, said it was because she was human and he didn't like her. The guy then remembered that people actually enjoyed eating fish skin. The guy proudly said that the biggest catch he ever had broke all the records, and he kept what was left in a special magic freezer. The girl threw her hands up in excitement and said she had never felt so happy before and thought it was amazing. The universe smiled down and said it was a good choice to stop there. The girl looked at the hero and gave a warm smile in return. Typhon rested her head on the girl's shoulder and closed her eyes. The girl silently thanked the universe for all the good things in her life as they kept on writing. The boy gently reminded them it was time to sleep, saying there was a bed waiting inside the carriage. Outside, the first light of sunrise glowed on the horizon. The guy pointed out that people were looking for them, and if they stayed too long in the carriage, others might think they had a stolen hero card. The girl was surprised to hear this. Typhoon looked at the guy and told him she felt safe when she was with him. Without taking his eyes off the road, Universe said they should stop in a field nearby. The guy thought for a moment and took back his words, explaining there was actually a village not far away, a place he remembered passing during his time fighting demons. Agreeing with himself, he decided they would stop in that village, known for its famous well called Aiden. The girl happily lifted her fist and said that's where they were going, so now they started their journey toward Aiden village. In the quiet village, there was a single path that wound up the mountain through the forest. At the end of this path stood an old, lonely well. Strange and frightening noises often echoed from deep inside it. The city of Idun, people were moving through the busy streets, passing by houses lined with statues. There was also a big poster showing a man calling himself a hero, and next to him, a girl. Universe and Typhon strolled through the city, amazed by everything around them. The guy wondered if this was really their destination. The girl smiled and pointed out how crowded it was. The couple stared at the statue and talked about it. The girl wondered if it showed a hero. The guy said it seemed like it. Suddenly, the girl made a surprised sound. She noticed the statue had the guy's own face under the hero's foot. On the base, there was a sign that read, Great Hero and Blockhead Universe. The girl asked if the universe was the thing under the hero's foot. The guy just nodded, not really sure. Tifona, feeling upset, walked up to the guy and told him everything felt wrong and that the universe wasn't supposed to be like this. The guy closed his eyes for a moment and gently told her it was just a little misunderstanding and nothing to worry about. The universe pointed ahead, encouraging her to move on. The girl, annoyed, puffed out her cheeks and looked away. A man carrying a bucket walked past the girl and brushed against her by mistake. He quickly apologized, and the girl told him it was no big deal. As he walked away, the man muttered something about a water well. The girl glanced down at the ground. In the village, there was a guy who believed he was a real hero. He liked to brag about himself, telling everyone it was finally time for such an amazing and good-looking hero to arrive. Typhon saw this guy and was scared, saying that he was there. The girl quickly hid behind Universe. Universe, annoyed, watched the crowd gathered around the so-called hero. The guys walked up to the group and started talking to them. The people turned to face them. One man, who had a cane and a scarf on his head, seemed to recognize Universe. The guy took a step back and noticed Typhon standing right behind him. The old woman pointed her cane at the boy and asked the crowd if they remembered the fool. Universe looked confused, unsure if they meant him. The old woman grinned, showing just a few teeth, and confirmed it was him, adding that he arrived without a speck of dust on him. The old woman's face twisted with disgust. She said the universe had deeply offended the spirit mistress Idun, and now the stories about the hero's brave deeds in the village were spreading, drawing people toward him. Universe hesitated, then said they wanted to spend the night there. The old woman scolded him for even asking. Angry, she explained that Lady Aiden had been upset lately, and their well was almost empty. She warned that if they let a criminal like Universe stay now, it would bring disaster to the whole village. The old woman with the staff turned around and said she would arrange a meeting between the hero and Mrs. Iden, hoping it would finally lift her spirits and encourage her to take action. The young man hesitated, worried that this meeting could cause confusion if it happened. Typhon, curious about what was going on, began paying closer attention. The girl realized this probably wasn't the hero she had in mind, so she glanced behind Universe. The hero, noticing her, started trying to impress her with his actions. Typhon grabbed Universe's cloak in shock. Her hopes for a different hero vanished, and now she was face to face with the person she disliked the most. The universe wanted to meet with the old woman, but she just got more upset and told him he was out of his mind. The villagers call the old woman their leader. She hears them and turns to ask what they need. They tell her that last time, Universe helped them, but he isn't really what they'd call a hero. The hero came up to the villagers, paused, and touched his chin as he thought. He suggested that giving the boy to Idun and letting her do what she wanted might somehow make things better for everyone. The old woman wondered. The hero paused for a moment, deep in thought, and wondered if this was the ultimate act of sacrifice. Then he said he'd toss the universe aside like an old cloth. Just then, an old woman came up to the hero and told him he could spend the night with them. But before that, he needed to meet Lady Odin. A group of people were hiking up a mountain. Leading the way was a man holding a lantern, with our hero right behind him. 2 others walked at the sides, carefully carrying the village leader between them. Universe and Typhon followed at the very end. The girl asked the universe if someone was actually coming for her. The guy looked over at Typhon. The girl then said she felt those people were probably planning something bad. The guy smiled at Typhon and told her not to worry, since Edon was only a spirit, and part of the reason they were here was because he hadn't explained something properly. The girl looked at him, surprised, with her mouth open. The old woman turned on her flashlight and announced they had reached their destination. In front of them was a well, topped with a small wooden shelter that looked like a shrine. Statues and posters surrounded the well, all showing a hero holding a girl in his arms. Even though the area looked normal, the well itself felt dark and gave off strange noises. The people nearby were frozen in shock, unable to move as they listened. Suddenly, the old woman nudged Universe forward, urging him to approach the well at last. Universe stared seriously at the well, almost as if trying to read its secrets, saying nothing. The guy took a step closer. Typhon glanced at Universe and kept quiet too. Suddenly, loud noises echoed from the well, and it felt like the whole universe froze in surprise. The crowd stared at the well, clearly scared. Suddenly, a black hand reached up from inside. Next, a head covered with long black hair slowly rose. Something strange climbed out of the darkness. The girl hid her whole face behind her hair, revealing just one eye peeking out from the shadows. That single look was full of fear and anger. She slowly reached out her hand toward everyone nearby. The girl twisted her face, opened her mouth, and reached out her hand as her hair flew wildly around her. Her eyes looked completely empty. The girl screamed and the boys quickly ran away from her. The girl with black hair just needed someone to help her. She pointed at the boy, and when he turned around, he screamed in fear. The girl quickly knocked the hero to the ground and pinned his shoulders. Everyone around stopped and stared, calling out his name in shock. The guy, trapped beneath her, looked terrified and cried out. The girl grabbed the hero with one hand and lifted her other arm, ready to hit. Something kept brushing against the hero's face. He shouted for help, hoping someone would hear him. The old woman, trembling with fear, begged Mrs. Iden to stop hitting the hero. She pointed at the couple and said that the foolish boy was just standing there, doing nothing. The lady stopped hitting the hero and slowly started to say the name of the universe, letter by letter. The hero was already knocked out. Miss Eden spun around with a sly smile just as she finished saying the boy's name. Universe and Typhon stood quietly, watching Odon. Suddenly, the spirit lady hurried toward them, and Typhon, scared, grabbed the boy's shoulder. Mrs. Idon's expression quickly turned warm and joyful. She lifted her hands and greeted Universe politely, saying, "Welcome back, sir." The girl ran to the boy and hugged him with happiness. Typhon stood there, stunned and speechless, her mouth open in surprise. The people behind her watched in silent shock, amazed by what was happening. Looking back at the past, people used to tell a story about a hero and the universe. Once, a team of heroes visited a village to ask the spirit of the well for help so they could defeat the demon lord. But the hero's servant, Yugiverse, secretly poisoned the well. Lady Idon, the spirit of the well, was filled with anger. But as soon as she saw the hero, her anger faded away. Moved by true love, Lady Odin promised to stay loyal to him forever. The girl shot the guy an angry look and called out his name. Miss Aiden lunged at Universe, but the boy stood his ground and didn't back away. Typhon shouted for the boy and ran to help him, but suddenly her eyes filled with fear. The girl saw Mrs. Iden give Universe a warm hug and say hello. Tafana stared at them, amazed by the strange scene. Lady Ada now looked like a young girl. Her ears seemed like little fins, and her long hair was now cut short into a bob. She wore a kimono tied with a bow at the back. Speaking about herself in the third person, she said she couldn't believe they met again and was really excited to see him. The hero woke up and hiccuped as he realized what was going on. Lady Ada told everyone that she had always remembered the universe and thought about it every night. Typhon, looking upset and confused, turned around and asked how she dared to hug him. The villagers and their leader stood quietly, watching everything with surprise and curiosity. The old woman trembled and, confused, wondered if Lady Idon really didn't hate the universe. Mrs. Odon shook her head and replied that wasn't true at all. In fact, she loved the universe. The old woman, looking worried, said she heard it straight from the hero himself. Mrs. Odon insisted, "Let me explain what really happened." The hero and three companions paused by the old well. The hero called out, demanding the well's spirit to show itself, saying they had come for her. But everything stayed quiet. There was no answer from the well. The hero frowned, upset at being ignored. The girl wearing a headscarf turned to Brabin, the hero, and gave him a vial of poison. Universe, the fifth member of their group, helped by carrying their supplies. The hero poured poison into the well, then looked up at the universe and quietly scolded it for being late. Mrs. Idon, angry and upset, climbed out of the well. She began attacking the hero as he tried to protect himself and begged her to stop. She tossed a bribe on the ground, but he pleaded with her again. The universe looked on in confusion, unsure what would happen next. As night settled in, Lady Eden, weak from poison, sat curled up and crying. Universe sat beside her. The girl warned that if nothing changed, even the village wells might soon be poisoned too. The man, looking sad, said he felt terrible about what the hero had done and couldn't bring himself to ask her for forgiveness. He just wanted permission to do one thing. The girl asked him what he wanted. Universe lifted his hands high and called out to the spirits, asking them to come. He turned to the girl and said he needed her help if she agreed. Lady Eden looked up and waited for what would happen next. During the dark night, many fireflies started to glow all around. Their lights came together near Mrs. Idon, and she was surprised, saying they were the spirits of spring. These tiny spirits looked like little fairies. They healed Mrs. Idon from the poison, and she felt the sickness leaving her body. To Mrs. Eden, Universe seemed like a heroic prince who rescued a princess, making everything around them sparkle like a scene from a fairy tale. He reached out his hand to her, smiled, and assured her she was safe, suggesting they should leave together. The girl gently held the prince's hand and walked forward with him. Miss Aiden and Universe took off into the sky, holding hands and sharing a meaningful look as they soared upward together. When the residents heard the story, they felt disappointed and wondered how the hero could do something like that. They also said that after this, Mrs. Aiden started caring for the ordinary worker. The girl still held on to the guy's sleeve, turned to everyone, and said she had told them the truth, asking why no one believed her. Mrs. Aiden pushed her bangs aside to show her forehead. There, the girl had a mark. The symbol was a hieroglyph that meant well. The girl started to glow, her whole body shining with a gentle light. The people quickly shielded their eyes from the intense light. They whispered that the sign of Mrs. Aiden, which proves the lady's great power, had now reached the highest level, level 4. The girl smiled and agreed, saying she felt overjoyed and peaceful, especially now that she was reunited with her university. Lady Aiden lifted her hands high and announced she was filled with power. The villagers stared where she pointed, amazed. Suddenly, water started shooting from the well behind her, pouring out like a fountain. People who happened to be outside were shocked. Water started pouring out of wells all over the city as they overflowed. Everyone was glad to see Mrs. Aiden smiling again, thanks to the hero, but someone joked that she was just in a better mood because the hero had gotten a scolding. Meanwhile, Raven was sneaking away, hoping nobody would notice. Lady Aiden explained to the village chief that people were mistaken. She didn't love the hero, but instead admired the whole universe. Smiling with confidence, the girl said that when the universe was close to her, she felt pure happiness and her heart was always full. People showed their respect to Lady Aiden. The man felt relieved and happy now that everything was finally understood. Then, out of nowhere, someone seemed to take control of the entire universe. The man looked back to see who was there. Typhon had his arms around Universe from behind. Feeling shy, she blushed, puffed out her cheeks, and quickly looked away from him. Universe looked at his friend with a confused face and asked, "What's wrong?" The girl shivered before she replied. Typhon gently took hold of his shirt and, feeling a bit shy, looked away and said that things like that didn't really bother her. The village chief faced Universe, kneeling down to sincerely apologize for her earlier behavior. The boy, feeling awkward and unsure, simply told her it was okay. The old woman smiled and said the Universe was their protector and hero, the one who had saved their village. She welcomed him warmly and told him to make himself comfortable. The leader started guiding the boys, promising to bring them to the inn. One boy glanced back at Mrs. Aiden. Meanwhile, the girl sat calmly on the well, gazing up at the sky. Mrs. Ida said with a sad voice that she couldn't leave the well. The boy gave her a warm smile and said he would be sure to visit her again before leaving the village. Ms. Aiden smiled warmly, grateful that the universe was willing to forgive her. As the couple arrived at the hotel entrance, a friendly girl dressed in a kimono welcomed them. She greeted them warmly and wished them a pleasant stay, but also let them know the hotel wasn't open yet and no one else had arrived. The girl showed the couple into the room and proudly said she was the best here. Typhon instantly liked the place and started twirling happily around the floor. The girl told the hero that this world was well known for its amazing hotel baths. Not only did they have indoor baths, but they also offered outdoor ones under the open sky. Just then, Typhon stepped out onto the balcony and looked below. Typhon asked the girl about the outdoor baths. The guy then suggested they go for a swim together. Typhon liked the idea and agreed right away. The bath was made of wood, and the water was so warm that steam rose from the surface. The boy relaxed in the bath beside the tiny spirits, happily saying how much he enjoyed being there. He told the spirits they did a great job today while they played and splashed in the water. Universe heard a noise behind him and curiously turned around. He saw a person walking his way. The girl, her hair wrapped in a towel, walked toward the bathhouse with a smile. The guy looked at her, clearly surprised. The universe scolded Typhon, saying this was a men's bathhouse, but the girl answered that the women's bathhouse was empty and she didn't want to be alone. The girl sat down and asked if they could join, since nobody else was around. The guy seemed a bit confused, but said yes. Typhon gently slid her toes into the water. The girl dove under the water and came back up smiling, saying it felt amazing, like all her tiredness had just disappeared. The guy grinned, mentioning that so much had happened today, and the girl nodded in agreement. Tiffin then admitted she was really scared earlier when she thought the hero was real. He was nothing like what she expected. The girl looked forward and mentioned that the hero's energy didn't feel as strong as the real deal. The guy thought about it and glanced ahead too. Universe said he'd heard that humans and spirits see things in different ways. Typhon glanced at the boy. The girl quickly stood up and pointed ahead, suggesting that maybe the fake hero was over there. Below the bathhouse, a bruised Breben sat on a chair, while the girl sat on the ground next to him. The guy's face was badly swollen. The man tapped the girl with his foot and told her to hurry up and do her work. The girl quietly obeyed the pretend hero. People around started whispering about how Mrs. Etten had beat him badly, and it turned out the rumors about the hero were true. The so-called hero just sat there while the girl gently cleaned the dirt from his face. Then all of a sudden, the girl was interrupted. The resident gently held the girl's hand and told her not to go back. The girl thought about replying, but stayed quiet. The injured hero grew furious and yelled, demanding to know how anyone could challenge him since he was the hero. The boy bravely stepped up to the false hero and challenged him. How could they support someone who had disrespected Mrs. Eden? If she felt hurt by their actions, she might refuse to help them again, and the well could go dry once more. Rabin jumped out of his seat and yelled that he would kick all their families out of the village because his parents owned the land. The boys kept walking without looking back, but the girl turned for one last glance. The man got really angry and shouted insults at the people living near the well. Water burst out of the well like a fountain, launching the hero high into the air. He screamed in fear, shivering from the cold, and begged for help, afraid he might not survive. University and Tafona watched a hero soar over the water. With a touch of irony, they joked about how relaxing the baths must be and how the scenery was actually quite fascinating. The girl wiped her hand and happily said she was lucky. She didn't have to marry the hero or wash his back. Now she felt really happy. The guy looked at her and smiled. The girl snapped out of it, shook a little, wiped off the water, and offered to rub his back. The guy was caught off guard and couldn't believe she made that offer. The universe reminded her that she had just mentioned she didn't want to help others out. The girl answered that this was about the hero alone, since he hadn't shown the spirits much respect, but she explained that the whole universe wasn't like him. She wanted to thank her companion for being kind, even in small ways. Typhon smiled and kept offering the man a favor. The man paused, thinking it over, and glanced up at the sky. The guy asked her to be gentle. The girl nodded. He sat on a chair, wearing just a towel, waiting for her to start. The girl knelt down, smiling as she rubbed his back. Typhon watched, noticing the scratch marks on his skin. The girl shivered and stepped back, talking about the guy behind his back. The universe didn't seem to care at all. Typhon noticed the boy's injured back and asked him how he got hurt. The girl wondered why he had a scar with the word stupid on it. Universe started to explain that during his quest to defeat the demon lord, he was always used as bait. He got stuck opening trapped chests while everyone else searched for treasure, and sometimes people would take out their frustration on him. As he shared his story, the girl's expression grew sadder and sadder. Typhon couldn't stand to see him so upset, so he gave him a comforting hug from behind, hoping to make him feel better. The girl began to cry and asked him why, after all the pain he had been through, he still tried so hard to help others, since his own wounds were so much deeper. The universe smiled and explained that the real issue wasn't his body, but his wish to keep his inventions and the spirits he cared for safe. That's why he always looked out for everyone around him. The girl listened to him, still wiping away her tears. The girl calmed herself down and said that after everything his body had been through, she would stay by his side and make sure to clean him up properly. The boy turned around, surprised to hear those words about understanding the universe. The girl and her little helpers started washing the guy together, working quickly and having fun. The guy burst out laughing and asked her to stop washing him because it tickled, but he liked it. The girl smiled and sat beside him. The boy came back to the room first, saying he was tired from laughing, but had really enjoyed himself. Now, he thought it was a good time to lay out the futon before Typhon got back. Universe was walking with his eyes closed, drying his hair with a towel around his neck, when he suddenly opened his eyes and froze in surprise. 7 beautiful girls in fancy robes were sitting together around the guy's futon. The girls called Universe their lord and thanked him for saving their village. They insisted on protecting him throughout the night. One girl playfully asked him to accept their deepest thanks. The man looked shocked and quickly stepped back, trying to avoid the woman's hands. But the girls gently laid the guy down and gathered around him. One of them playfully took the belt off his robe using just her mouth. She glanced at shyly, quickly unfastened his belt, and revealed his stomach and chest. The girl gently placed her hand on the boy's stomach. Universe shut his eyes and silently hoped for rescue. Suddenly, the girls spread out across the room, keeping their distance from the guy. The girl began to fall out of the window. Typhoon quickly used her powers to protect the universe from the troublesome women. The man turned to the girl, straightened his robe, and thanked her for rescuing him. Tafona stood in front of the guy, feeling shy as he looked at her. Her cheeks blushed, and she nervously held onto her robe's collar. The guy tried to say something, but Tafona quickly spoke first. Typhon got down on her knees, bowed her head, and said that even though she was a bit rough around the edges, she hoped you would look after her. The girl smiled shyly, her cheeks turning red as she glanced at the boy. Typhon said that the universe had always taken care of her, so now she wanted to return the favor and help him. The guy stared at her, clearly puzzled, while she quickly looked away, feeling embarrassed. Suddenly, Typhon jumped from the floor onto the futon and asked if he could stay nearby at night to protect him, promising to help the boy sleep peacefully. The guy looked at the girl angrily and asked if she even understood what it meant. The girl calmly said she did and began to pull out a book to prove it. Phoenix flipped through the book, searching for the section about being a night guard. She began to read and explained that first, the man needed to rest his head on her lap. She leaned back, closed her eyes, and gently encouraged him to lie down with her. The universe rested its head on the girl's lap. She felt a bit shy, but quickly checked the book to see what to do next. She called to make sure the guy felt comfortable and explained she wanted to check in before moving forward. He didn't say much, but his silence showed he was okay with everything. The girl paused to think and said she wanted to tell a good bedtime story. Typhon wondered what she meant. Noticing his confusion, the girl started her story. The boy listened while resting his head on her lap. The girl pulled a spooky face and started telling a story she heard from her friend, the spirit of Fuchi. She said that when night falls, something strange happens to the portrait in her music room. The girl started to feel really awkward and upset with herself because she couldn't tell a story well, but then something important came back to her mind. The man closed his eyes and asked if she believed the stories told at night were about ghosts. Then he stood up from his knees and accidentally bumped his head pretty hard. The girl pulled back from the guy, gently swinging her legs to shake off the tingling feeling. She winced a little from the cramps in her legs. The universe noticed her, smiled, and watched her move. The guy glanced at the girl and noticed she was already softly snoring. Smiling, he joked that she fell asleep as fast as a little kitten. The man saw the girl, and a warm smile appeared on his face. The universe paused for a moment, realizing it hadn't had this much fun in a long time. The boy gently unfolded the blanket while the sleeping girl quietly smiled and thanked him, saying she felt truly happy with him. He quietly watched her and spread out the futon. The universe gently wrapped itself around the sleeping girl, grateful for her kind and loving words. It was late at night, and the guy told his friend good night. As morning arrived, the boy slowly woke up and got off his futon. He noticed that everything in his room seemed completely out of place. Universe stepped out onto the porch and saw Hyphen sleeping on the old broken wall. Fallen leaves were scattered all around the sleepyhead. The guy gently lifted the girl without disturbing her sleep. The village chief walked up to them from behind and cheerfully greeted them with a good morning. The old woman smiled and said she saw how much the couple enjoyed themselves yesterday. She added that today, they began some home improvements, and Mrs. Eden was putting in a lot of effort, so everything was going smoothly. The lady spirit told the workers that having signs would be helpful and show the way ahead. Typhon started to wake up. The girl stared ahead, amazed as she floated free from the grasp of the universe, curious about what scene she was seeing. The chief said the painting looked great and pointed out that it showed the Uniers rescuing Lady Eden. The old woman mentioned that the villagers had always drunk water from Lady Eden's well. The leader explained that everyone's happiness in the community is linked to how happy Mrs. Eden feels, and she has only now understood this connection. The grandmother bowed to the hero and said she would no longer honor him. From now on, she would only show respect to Lady Eden and her dear Uniers. Universe looked uneasy and politely asked them to stop. The leader smiled at him and explained that she was sent by Mrs. Eden, reminding Universe not to forget to visit her. Typhon and Universe were walking up the mountain to see Lady Idona, chatting about the new posters in town. The girl joked that she looked like Niru Kiara, the earth spirit, on one of them. Typhon smiled, saying everyone loved that spirit. The guy added that to him, she was even more beautiful. The boys walked up to the well, while Mrs. Eden stood across from them on the other side. The girl held a sword and said she was waiting for Universe, calling him Lord. Ms. Eden explained that the sword was the legendary sacred blade from the well, and asked Universe to take it with him. Typhon stepped back in surprise and started to speak. The Universe's companion began to share a tale. They said if someone pulled the sword from the well, water would burst out, turning the blade into a magical water sword. People even believed this sword was so powerful, it could slice the moon in a single swing. Lady Odin closed her eyes and agreed that what the girl said was true. The universe questioned her about why she wanted to give him something so precious, then explained that if the hero had truly wanted it, he would never have given the sword back to Lady Adon. The Lady of the Wells explained that when they started their journey, the hero once more demanded the sacred sword from her, but she refused. So the hero planned to pour poison into the well again, but this time, the poison was even stronger than before. The boy was surprised and asked if the hero had really poisoned Lady Idon's well again. The lady spirit told the universe that to keep herself alive and protect the village, she needed to sleep at the very bottom of the well, deep in the water. The lady stood by the well and explained that she let it dry up for a reason. The heroes listened quietly, and Adon stayed silent. Smiling, the lady told Adon she had watched how he acted yesterday, and this made her sure he was the right person to use the sacred sword, Edon. Lady Odon's expression suddenly turned worried. She asked him to take the sword, saying it was hers, and begged him to always keep it close. Typhon looked at the young man with sympathy and urged him to accept Lady Odon's gift. The girls kept asking questions, while the boy grabbed the sword with both hands. Universe leaned in to get a better look at the sword. The universe smiled at Lady Idun and promised he would look after the sword she gave him. Mrs. Idun relaxed, smiled, and tilted her head a little, clearly amused by what the guy said. The spirit of the lady from the well smiled and said everything was all right now. She stayed at the edge of the well, while the girl opened her arms and slowly disappeared into a gentle, magical light. The boys just watched, confused by what was going on. Then Typhon shouted for Lord Ada. Mrs. Ada started to rise gently into the air, her body slowly fading away. Smiling warmly, she promised them they would definitely see her again. Tifona nervously mentioned that the lady was aware the sword would vanish if she handed it over. Suddenly, Universe shouted to Lady Odon in alarm. Meanwhile, the spirit quietly observed them, smiling to itself. Almost blending with the light, Eden softly thanked them for their kindness, said how happy she was to meet them, and bid them farewell. Fona reached out her hand and called out, asking her to stop, saying they were friends now and she couldn't just walk away. The guy glanced at Mrs. Idun with a sad look. In the mountains, a girl's cry echoed loudly as the sun began to set behind the peaks. The boys were heading toward the village. Typhon was softly crying, wiping away her tears. Universe walked quietly by her side. Suddenly, someone asked Typhon why she was upset. When the girl looked back, she was startled to find Lady Idun sitting next to the well. Typhon called out to Idun, and the spirit seemed to tremble. Typhon froze in shock and pointed at Odon, saying she had died. The guy stared in disbelief, his mouth wide open. Lady Adon admitted that yesterday she felt so low she wished she was dead, but now she was overjoyed because she had met the universe. The lady's spirit joyfully shared that she was no longer stuck at the well where the famous sword was kept, and now she was free to visit other wells whenever she wanted. Lady Idun thanked the boys for bravely taking on the responsibility of the sword and felt truly happy. Typhon, meanwhile, looked upset and seemed to feel left out. As for Universe, he laughed, feeling relieved and joyful that everything had worked out in the end. A thin-faced man in a uniform tapped the machine nervously with his screwdriver. He couldn't believe that his great master Gatsu had been dismissed and made minister of the universe. In his mind, he kept telling himself this just wasn't possible. Gatsuin stood next to the car, fixing a spare part. He thought about how hard he had worked to earn his place, but somehow, the universe had taken it away from him. Now he felt like he had to make up for his past mistakes, and for the mistakes of the so-called heroes who had let everyone down. The man leaned in close to his invention, determined to make it even better, and told himself that this time, his barbecue machine would finally work. Out in nature by the river, there was a grassy area with a tall archway and a sign welcoming King Vaswemp. Guards stood near the arch and announced that all spirit weddings were canceled, but the heroes' festival would still go on. Another knight added that this festival celebrates the victory over the demon lord. Goatson clicked his barbecue tongs, while the guards chatted about whether this was an official diplomatic meeting. Goatson stood, warmly thanking the king for coming. At the table, there was an older man with gray hair, a big mustache, and a beach shirt featuring a hero's face. Gyukun announced that tonight's dinner would be extra special, made with their own top-quality ingredients and cooked on a grill they built themselves. King Vaswamp smiled and said it was fascinating because this was the final creation of Minister Gotswan, who many believed was the greatest magical engineer in the world. Gutsman said he'd heard people struggle to control the flames on their grills. He wanted to show it's actually easy. Grabbing the tongs, he confidently explained that you just need to add your food and switch on the grill. Soon, you'll have a hero-worthy barbecue. The king was amazed by what he heard and quickly got up from his chair. The man invited the king to try the new invention in person, asking him to turn the handle of the device. Curious, the king agreed, and as he turned the handle, he realized it was actually a new way to start things up. Suddenly, the equipment blew up right in front of the king. Everyone was in shock. The king caught on fire and screamed in pain. People shouted for help. Quickly, the king jumped into the water to put out the flames. The king's followers started blaming Gott's servant, accusing him of trying to harm Magded. They claimed it was all a setup and that he had made the king turn the handle. Now the king was lying on the ground while the healer took care of him. The man raised his hands and insisted that they were mistaken, it couldn't have been an assassination attempt. He remembered testing the device at home, and nothing like this ever happened. He wondered why things went wrong now. The angry spirits beneath the grate replied that Gatswan had triggered the power of the universe, and then took all the credit for himself. The spirits of fire and the forest were furious, their faces filled with anger, and they shouted that this was completely unforgivable. The vassal charged at Gatsawin, yelling that he would finally get his punishment. Gatsawin dropped to the ground, shielding his head with his hands and crying out in fear. Suddenly, a voice called out to the men. The king wiped his face and said that even brilliant people can make mistakes. Just look at someone as famous as Gozan. The vassals paused and turned back, calling out to the king, who listened closely. Gotsuan quickly spoke up, telling the king he was innocent and had nothing to do with what happened. Gotsun knelt down and insisted that he wasn't the one who created this invention. He said it was actually the master of the universe, the same being who had kidnapped the spirit princess. Gotsun even let a tear roll down his cheek and tried to put all the blame on the universe, claiming that his invention had nothing to do with the king's death and that he knew nothing about it. The king, puzzled, asked, "Didn't you say you invented this grill and put your own name on it?" The man then understood he was caught in his lie. The hero got up from his seat and told him to stop acting foolish and just admit he was guilty. Guts was surprised by what his old comrade said. Raben shot Gotswin an angry look, thinking this useless minister had to go soon, before he put everyone at risk. The accused nervously chewed his fingernail, deep in thought. He remembered how, after defeating the demon lord, he and the hero enjoyed barbecue together, celebrated each day, and playfully set whole universes alight just for fun. Gotsun started to explain that it was actually Breben's idea, and he had agreed that their goal was to shock people by suddenly setting them on fire using a barbecue tool. Gutson boldly shouted at Bravine, surprising everyone with his nerve. Bravine grew angry, walked closer, and demanded to know what Gutson meant. In response, Gutson grabbed Bravine by the neck and pulled him in, showing he was ready for a fight. Gotswin quietly shared his idea with the hero. He said that if he confessed to the crime, he would have to face the consequences too. His real goal was to get closer to King Vampu's inner circle. The hero was confused and didn't really understand what Gotswin meant. Then Gutswin suggested checking if the young king's clothes made him look energetic, saying that if the outfit seemed lively, the king would be happy. But the king just stood there quietly, watching everything with a disappointed look. Once they were on the same page, Brayman and Gatsun started their sneaky act. Brayman began praising barbecue, calling it the best invention of their time in an overly excited voice. Gatsun quickly joined in, pretending to be amazed and loudly adding his own fake excitement. The hero walked up to the king, confidently put his hand on the king's shoulder, and joked that even someone as stylish as the king knew about this. Then another person copied his gesture and, pretending to be excited, cheered, "Keep it up." Still, instead of being surprised, King Waswamp coldly accused them both of being cruel and hurting people without ever saying sorry. He even claimed they set fires just for fun. He went on, mockingly saying how disappointed he was that the hero who saved the world and the top magical engineer turned out to be such difficult and unpleasant people. When the king finished talking, Breban and Gotswin were stunned by his words. They couldn't come up with a clear response, so all they managed was a confused and loud formal reply. The king announced that the man who had fled to their country had been caught. He suggested they talk about this important news together at a barbecue, highlighting how much this meeting mattered. To end the meeting, Waswamp said he would act like it never took place. He also mentioned that he wanted to rethink their relationship with the country, made his disappointment obvious, and said he no longer wanted to work with them. Once the master left, Brabin suddenly yelled the magic mechanic's name, his face twisting with anger and spite. He was extremely angry about what was happening and blamed Gatsun for being totally incompetent. He insisted that he should have handled everything himself from the start, instead of relying on anyone else. After catching his breath, the blonde guy calmly pointed out that the engineer would probably have been fired if it weren't for the festival. He didn't finish his thought, but it was clear he was already thinking about what kind of punishment should come next. Now the man was demoted. He wasn't even the deputy minister of the Department of Magical Devices anymore. He was just the assistant minister. That was Brabin's decision for Gotswin. He couldn't believe what he just heard. He definitely didn't see the demotion coming. As the festival ended, Gatswin walked down the street, feeling sad and alone. As he walked alone, he thought about his son, who always wished to follow in his footsteps and become a minister. Sadly, he realized he couldn't bring himself to tell his family about being demoted by 2 ranks. It was simply too painful. He also knew he couldn't share it with his friends because he feared they might laugh at him. The The man thought that no information should be shared during the festival, so he told himself he would stay as minister until the next round of changes. He tried to keep what was really happening a secret. These thoughts made him feel better and gave him more confidence to win his place back, so he was ready to give it everything he had. As he strolled cheerfully to his office, he noticed some quiet voices coming from the half-open door. He decided to quietly peek through the crack to find out what was happening. He saw two men putting on a silly performance. They acted very serious as they pretended to congratulate a doll dressed like Mr. Universe for being made a minister. Then they smiled and said they had always trusted him and that he was much better than any bosun. The man, clearly upset by what he heard, stormed into the office with clenched teeth. He angrily accused the others of littering where they shouldn't and insisted this wasn't a spot for a doll. The sound made them look back, and right away they recognized someone they knew. With smirks, they called him by his new title, Assistant Minister, clearly teasing to see if he could handle being lowered to that position. Feeling anxious, the group quickly demanded to know how their secret had been discovered. The answer came in a chilling confession. Someone had talked to a nun who saw everything that happened at that unforgettable banquet. Someone there mentioned that he heard about the demotion because of how he had been acting lately. He also said that Mr. Universe was now the new minister. That was the reason their weird ceremony with the doll was simply a practice for the big welcome event. The man finally lost his patience and yelled that none of it mattered. He was still the one in charge. Suddenly, a man bursts in and kicks Gotswin. Gotswin screams in pain as the stranger calls him a loser. The man walked in, said his name, and told everyone he was the new leader. Then, he pointed at the man sitting on the floor and complained that he wasn't showing respect. He told everyone to call him by his new title from now on. Since April, repeated physical attacks left the former minister on the ground, unable to keep from crying out in pain. Meanwhile, someone made a cruel joke about how unlucky he was. Clenching his teeth at the discomfort, he felt so wronged that he promised himself he'd get even twice over when he got back. But the other person just gave a sarcastic smile, clearly amused, and didn't take the threat seriously at all. Poe realized the man who now worked under him didn't stand much of a chance. He asked a pointed question: would Mr. Universe really choose someone who had made fun of him to be a minister? The answer was obvious, hidden right in the question itself. The new boss calmly said that after talking things over, he had decided to hurt him, and even joked that the universe would probably enjoy seeing his enemy suffer. He said that these actions would totally make up for all the humiliations they had made the master go through before. With clear sarcasm, he added that now it was their chance to behave in a Gotsujin way, purposely using that phrase. Suddenly, Gatswin understood that his situation was just like what the universe had gone through before. Overwhelmed with emotion, he shouted in frustration. Then, he announced that from this moment on, he was willing to take on all of Apple's toughest and most unpleasant tasks. The angry boss suddenly told his employee to get out, using harsh and insulting words. His loud and furious shouts made it clear that the former minister had completely lost his standing. A line of carriages rolled down the road, each one pulled by mechanical horses. Their metal legs moved in sync, making a steady, rhythmic creaking sound as they went. Riding in one of the carriages, King Wazwamp felt disgusted as he thought about how some truly awful people could be admired as heroes. He couldn't help but feel deeply disappointed that people like this were held in such high regard. The attendant respectfully told the king they were close to the border and pointed out something nearby. Even though he spoke politely, his voice sounded worried. The ruler glanced outside and was shocked to see the soldiers standing in formation, their bodies spelling out a message that claimed the universe was responsible for everything, giving him an excuse to come back. Wazavamp went from feeling confused to getting really, really angry. He couldn't stop thinking about how the people who hurt him felt no regret at all. It was eating him up inside, and he realized he just couldn't take it anymore. While he was driving, he saw a sign that said Lake Ricotto was coming up soon. The angry king demanded that the owner take down all the offensive signs right away. The man answered nervously, saying that everything was already taken care of. As Waswamp looked around, he spotted a sign showing a young man together with Princess Typhona. He was shocked when he realized the person in the picture was the universe himself. Just then, the man beside him asked if they had met before. The man excitedly pointed out that this person was a well-known explorer whose adventures had become legends. They even kept one of his famous stories safe. The king, surprised and intrigued, asked to hear about this remarkable tale. The narrator was excited to share that this young man wasn't just an amazing chef. He also set a world record by effortlessly catching a massive mason. With these accomplishments, he took the top spot from Brabant. After hearing the story, the king shook his head sadly and said that even with everything that happened, the man was still guilty of taking Princess Typhon. Mr. Owner asked the man if he had any passion, saying that if he did, it made no sense. Then the girl beside him joked that they got along so well, they seemed like a couple in love. Passerby noticed that the princess strongly stood up for anyone who made fun of Universe, as if she took every insult to heart. A girl in the crowd, clearly impressed, said she thought this kind of loyalty was truly wonderful. The king glanced once more at the picture of the boy and the princess. He remembered how the young master caught the biggest moss on, and the thought made him smile. Meanwhile, the two of them are riding together in a carriage. The girl asks her friend if the pond water is safe to drink. He tells her that, as far as he knows, it's usually fine to drink. He also mentioned that ponds with spirits have crystal clear water, and if a traveler drinks it, the water can refresh them and give back their energy. The princess suddenly became curious and asked if Universe gained his strength by drinking water during his journeys and what it tasted like, but he told her he became strong without drinking any water, which surprised and amazed her. Suddenly, Typhon got an idea. Since none of them had ever tasted this water before, they should all give it a try. She was especially curious because she had never had it herself, and she really wanted to know what it was like. "All right, let's go toward the water." He mentioned there's something near the road where he took a break during the hike. The Fountain of Souls was a special place. Hearing about it made the girl excited, and she happily insisted that they should hurry there to taste its magic water. Typhon travels across the universe, riding on a powerful mechanical horse called Trance, heading towards their destination. The girl says she really wants a drink from the fountain because she's so thirsty her throat feels super dry. The spirit hides deep in the forest, making it much harder to find than when the guy was here before. Back during the fight with the Lord, they spent a long time searching for him. Right now, the universe turns its attention to a mysterious structure far away, one that looks a lot like a giant statue. No one could tell exactly what kind of statue it was. The main character realized that this strange statue made it easy to remember where he was. But soon, something else caught his eye, and he quickly forgot about the statue. He noticed an old temple with an inscription that called it the Cathedral of the Source. As the main character tried to take in all the changes happening around them, Typhon began talking to someone nearby. The door to the building creaked loudly as it slowly swung open. A weary nun stepped out and welcomed them with a gentle smile, describing the place as a sanctuary for spring spirits. But as soon as she spotted a familiar face among the visitors, her friendliness faded away. The girl instantly recognized Universe and was outraged that he dared to show up in such an important place. Her voice, shaking with anger, demanded to know why he was there. While he quietly mumbled to himself, his friend smiled and politely explained that they only wanted a drink of water from the fountain. After a moment of hesitation, the hostess finally invited them in and told them to feel at home. The nun, trying to stay calm but still cautious, asked Universe to be respectful to the local spirits. Typhon quickly defended him, promising that he would never act disrespectfully. The princess, trying to make her point, spoke straight to Universe. He eagerly tried to get her attention, but before he could say much, a woman suddenly arrived and guided them toward the fountain. The place was filled with bright colors and decorations, looking like it was ready for a big celebration. The girl approached the gently bubbling water first. She was told it was safe to drink, but she should be careful, as it might have some effects on her body. Typhon felt let down by the news and said this wasn't how she pictured things would go, but the woman just replied with a smirk, telling her to blame the universe for that. She said this young man once came here with the hero squad. During their visit, something strange happened. He trapped the spirit and used it as target practice. If you find this hard to believe, you can always ask the hero himself for the full story. The black-haired lady continued her story, explaining that after that event, the spirits disappeared, leaving the place nearly deserted. People tried different ways to invite them back and ask for forgiveness, even building a cathedral for them. These spirits are very shy, but the nun hoped that if she waited quietly, maybe one of them would come back. She carefully decorated the whole place to welcome them, just in case they decided to return. But now the girl, sad and on the verge of tears, said that it was all over. She believed that since Mr. Universe appeared at the fountain, no one would come back. However, the guy's friend disagreed and said it was just a mix-up. Fighting back her tears, the woman spun around and yelled, demanding to know what Typhon meant by misunderstanding. And then she saw something that totally shocked her. Typhon turned and noticed the guy was nearly hidden by a crowd of spirits, making him look like he was fading from sight. The woman was so shocked by what was going on that she started loudly talking about how many spirits were in the spring. She also mentioned that it was nearly impossible to see. Even the shape of a person was barely visible through this ghostly veil. She couldn't help but ask how this could even be real. Suddenly, she felt sick, collapsed, and passed out. The The guy and the girl rushed over to check on her, quickly realizing that something was seriously wrong. They brought her into the room, wrapped her in a blanket, and helped her lie down to rest. She got a fever and started getting confused while she slept, talking about how her friends wouldn't leave her, and saying she felt really lonely because she was all by herself. When she woke up, Typhon handed her some water, saying it was just regular water. She thanked him and took a few sips. The girl shared that she dreamed of a young man surrounded by spring spirits, but she was told it wasn't just a dream, it was real. She went on to say that, dream or not, if this guy really could call on the spirits, she felt truly happy about it. The nun chose to apologize to the young man for being rude to him before. He answered awkwardly, saying it was nothing to worry about. The lady then asked the guests to spend the night at her place, because it was already too late to travel. It's the middle of the night, everyone is sound asleep, but the universe is wide awake, sitting up and watching over everything. He got up quietly and moved carefully, making sure not to disturb anyone as he walked with a clear goal in mind. It turned out he was going to the garden where the water was. The whole place was shining with beautiful decorations. The man slowly began removing the decorations. He spoke softly, almost like he was worried he'd get in trouble because everything looked so nice. Then, as he took off the next piece, he paused and went quiet for a moment. But to these animals, the lights were just too bright, and he thought that might scare them. He soon realized that someone had been secretly keeping an eye on him the whole time, carefully watching from a hidden spot. The universe spotted the curious onlooker and softly said she must be new to the world. He gently assured her there was nothing to worry about, since nothing sparkled like before. He reached out his hand to the tiny spirit girl. She flinched, scared of him, but he gently promised he could help her escape. She shut her eyes tightly and, trembling with fear, chose to bite his finger. When she opened her eyes, she noticed the bite mark and saw that his hand was still there. He looked at her with a slight smile, which really surprised her. Later, the universe asked if she was feeling better and assured her that he wasn't her enemy, so there was nothing to worry about. Surprisingly, this tiny creature has healing powers. She helped the boy by gently licking his wound. She glanced at him with a guilty expression, but he reassured her and said he wasn't upset with the baby at all. The happy little girl, her eyes sparkling with excitement, told him that she wanted to be his friend. The universe gently asked him to rest in its hand, and suddenly, he was surrounded by a group of glowing spirits in the darkness. The guy was surprised, but he decided to be honest. He told them that even though he was happy to see everyone, he didn't have to act like he did during the day. If needed, it was better to talk to each person one at a time. The main character instantly wished they hadn't done it, because now they had to wait in a huge, never-ending line. Then he couldn't stop smiling and laughing, and he felt the spirit wrap around him once more. Someone else was also looking at this funny scene through the window. It was a nun. She couldn't use her intense gaze, because the spring spirits had truly come back to where they belonged. Still feeling surprised, she quietly said they all really missed Universe, even though in theory they were supposed to hate it. Typhon stepped in and said he'd always treated spirits with kindness, which is why they liked him so much. The girl then looked at the boy's friend. She wanted to know if it was true, so she asked if she was really a wind spirit. The girl realized she hadn't said her name yet and quickly apologized, then introduced herself. The lady with black hair seemed a bit shy as she asked for the name again, pointing out that it was the same as a famous princess from this place. Typhona, looking a little uncomfortable, admitted that she was actually that princess. The nun was completely shocked. She couldn't hold back her emotions and let out a scream so loud, people outside on the street could hear it. The universe rushed over when it heard the scream, worried something was wrong. It was surprised by what it found. His friend stood there, looking shy and nervously playing with her hair. The lady of the house was kneeling, apologizing because she hadn't realized she was a real princess. In the spirits' havens, everything is provided for the spirits, so they are highly respected in these places. There's a clear hierarchy in place. Most people see humans as being on top. Typhona said this isn't necessarily a bad thing. The little girl was amazed and delighted when she saw the spring spirits. She asked if they loved the universe. Before they could reply, she said she loved him too and happily ran into his arms. The girl on her knees stared at them both, her eyes wide with real surprise. Feeling curious and a bit confused, she set out to discover for herself why the spirits liked him so much, especially since the spring spirits are usually very shy and don't talk to anyone. Universe stayed silent, so Typhon spoke for him, saying he gave off a warm, gentle feeling that surrounded her like the smell of flowers. That's why she felt drawn to him, like a butterfly drawn to something sweet. The young woman on the floor lowered her head once more. She genuinely asked him to explain how the spirits could find their way back home. The universe asked her why she wanted it. she glanced up at him, her eyes filled with sorrow. The woman said that more and more of the nearby forest was being cut down to make space for the cathedral. Soon, she explained, the whole forest would disappear and be replaced by a park with walking paths. She raised her voice and explained that if this happens, the spirits will lose their home. That's why she's asking for help. She can't handle this by herself. The main character stutters a bit as he responds, saying he understands the problem. After that, everyone starts to smile, especially the hostess of the cathedral. The next day, the universe explained that the fountain's creatures dislike direct light, unless it's reflected off the water, so all decorations had to be taken away. The nun replied with a hint of sadness that she didn't realize it, and actually thought the sparkles would make everyone happy. After finishing her cleaning, Tiffin asked if there was anything else she could do and suggested cleaning the fountain water. But she was told the spirits would take care of it themselves. This is because springs with spirits naturally get cleaner over time. However, it can take up to 10 years for this to happen. But then, just as she was about to finish her sentence, she suddenly paused. It all started when the universe told the spirits that if anyone wanted to join in the fun of purifying water, they could simply sit on his finger. As soon as they did, a magical mushroom shape would appear on his finger, made entirely out of spirits. With a big smile, he happily told us it's time to have some fun and pointed to show us which way to go. The spirits started to play and get to work, cleaning the fountain's water. Watching them brought a sense of pure joy to everyone. It looked magical and truly wonderful. The girl screamed in surprise as she looked into the water. She felt completely different and admitted she had been foolish and childish before. She started to explain, with sadness in her voice, that she grew up in this shelter and believed she understood spirits better than anyone. Typhon walked over to comfort her, gently patting her head. She tried to lift her conversation partner's mood, telling them that she was doing her best to understand the spirits, no matter what. The woman nodded in agreement, and the girl went on talking. She realized that the host acted as if the spirits were real people. Most people see them as just animals, but Typhon smiled and explained that spirits feel really happy when they are treated with respect, just like everyone else. The nun understood and asked if, by following this path, she could eventually become like her teacher. The girl wanted to know who this teacher was, and the answer was the universe itself. The guy stood off to the side, quietly watching their talk and already sensing that something was about to go wrong. The princess went on to say that, unlike her, this man was actually favored by the wind spirits and much more popular with them. The dark-haired lady said she believed their teacher was truly special, and the girl agreed, saying she thought he was amazing too. Their eyes lit up with happiness, sparkling like stars, and they smiled as they proudly called him their teacher. The man was skillfully working on a project with his knife. Typhon saw him and got curious, so he came over to check out what was happening. Some spirits floated nearby, keeping an eye on everything. When she saw the young man making something out of wood, she smiled and asked if he knew how to do that as well. She wondered if he was building a place for the spirits in this safe space, and Universe answered that he was. She then asked if he had done this before when he was here. The lesson was suddenly stopped when a nun mentioned that the hero claimed he did everything just for the spirit. The girl responded, saying she didn't quite believe that was true. She asked the guy if it was true, and he seemed a bit uneasy. The woman, wearing simple apostolic clothes, said she thought the man was actually cruel and treated the spirits very badly. At first, she couldn't believe what she heard and refused to accept it. She crouched down and lowered her head, saying sorry for not understanding. The universe, looking puzzled, gently asked her to look up. But she kept her head down and said she didn't deserve it because she had made a big mistake by treating him like that. As she kept talking, the woman suddenly grew anxious. She understood something important. It wasn't just her who had made a mistake. Another nun from the nearby cathedral was involved too. Unsure of what to do next, and with the other two listeners confused by her reaction, they decided to ask her what was really happening. They walked into a small room at the very top of the cathedral. Then a big cloth was taken off, revealing a large statue of someone. Typhon quickly put her hand over her mouth in surprise when she noticed the statue was a replica of the hero who once saved the country. The confused guy then asked if she truly believed that. Curious, Typhon wanted to know why the statue was there. The woman said they needed to compete with the nearby cathedral, so they chose to make statues of the hero and see which group could attract more spring spirits. Next, they showed their creations to King Waswamp, who would pick the best one. When the story ended, the girl was curious and asked how things ended up this way. He got a sad reply. Without the spring spirits, they couldn't keep this place safe. Without their help, the temple might fall apart. That's why they agreed to share the hero with each other. Now she sees that the hero statue can't actually summon spirits, so she feels lost and unsure what to do next. but Typhon just laughs and says that it's all much simpler than she thinks. She also cheerfully said she could create a statue of the entire universe. The young man turned red with surprise when he realized that his own statue was the answer to the problem. However, the woman explained that the king would be there in a few days, and she promised to show him the statue of the hero. Typhon, however, insisted that if their main aim was to call on spirits, they didn't need to wait or worry about anything else. Once she understood this, the nun agreed. The princess then said that with everyone's help, they would definitely succeed and finish everything together. She asked the spirits if they agreed too. She heard a happy squeak, which meant yes. The two girls were overjoyed, and everyone agreed to make a statue of Mr. Universe. But Universe refused to make it, saying it's strange to build a statue of yourself. You could tell he felt awkward about it. Everyone was shocked by what he said, their jaws dropping in disbelief. People began asking him questions, impressed by how much he knew. The guy, looking a bit embarrassed, admitted it was true, but said making a statue of himself would feel really awkward. The girl then wanted to know what had happened in Iden village, but the guy told her that it was actually her own actions that caused it. Almost in tears, Typhon asked if having these feelings was wrong, saying he thought the person was really amazing and admired by many others. This way, things will get even better and more exciting for everyone. He accepted his situation and started sculpting a statue of himself. The girl thanked him for his help, and he replied that he only did a little. This made the girl smile with pure happiness. She told him she was really glad they could finally do a project together. He thought about what Typhon had said about them being together and felt a wave of relief. If she was happy, then everything was okay. When the universe finished creating the body, everyone was amazed and said it was absolutely perfect. With total confidence, they promised to handle the head on their own. They tried redoing it several times, hoping to make it look better, but each time it just ended up looking worse. They were getting frustrated and annoyed because they just couldn't get it right. A visitor came by, but Typhon quickly told him to stay away. As the guy left, he joked that if they shaved down the face anymore, it would end up tiny. She felt a silent frustration, wishing her creative spark would finally come alive. Then she said the sculpture wasn't really about his idea, but about revealing the true form hidden inside the stone. She let out a deep sigh, and the universe just listened in silence. A bit later, he called her and suggested they accept help from the tiny earth spirits. She felt really happy, and her mood brightened right away. The girl was surprised that they understood everything so well and suggested they build a whole universe together. She confidently put on her glasses, pulled her coat back, and struck a pose, trying to look even more impressive. She kept her confident look as she directed the process, suggesting the nose should be a bit more crooked and the teeth in the mouth should have more chips to make the sculpture look even more real. She was nearly done and started saying how great she looked, almost exactly how she wanted. Just then, a nun walked in and asked if anyone wanted to take a quick snack break. Everyone smiled and said yes, happy to pause and recharge. The spirits of spring and earth enjoyed tea and sweets together, sharing a delicious meal. Even Typhon felt joyful. The cathedral's mistress walked over and politely asked the young man if he had a moment to talk about something important. He seemed unsure and quietly mumbled a response. She wished she could connect with spirits just as easily as her teacher could. She also said she used to think people could only scare away spirits, not ask them for help, and when she wanted something from them, she imagined catching them in a net, almost like catching bugs. But the young master doesn't do these things and still gets support from everyone. That's why she wondered, how can she be like him? He stayed quiet and listened carefully, thinking about what was being said. But then he explained that they actually needed to use them. He explained that spirits feel happy when they can use their powers to help, but this doesn't mean they'll help everyone. They only support people who respect them, not those who see them just as a tool to get what they want. He continued, saying that they aren't there just to grant your wishes. Instead, you should see them as partners who work with you to create the future. All he wants is for the spirits around him to always be happy, and he does his best every day to make sure they smile. After he finished talking, he realized everyone had been listening closely and seemed deeply moved by what he said. Even Typhon, holding back tears, respectfully asked him why he was so kind, saying this made him a truly valuable friend and ally. Suddenly, the universe got worried and urged them to change the way they were speaking. Or to put it simply, please stop. Even now, he asked so politely that the girls couldn't help but laugh. He crossed his arms and pouted. Meanwhile, in the neighboring city, you can easily spot a massive statue of the hero, Breben. You can see the great founder cathedral, a sacred place for spirits. Suddenly, a loud, disappointed cry echoes through the air. The great nun anxiously asks herself why the spirits of spring aren't coming back. even though they built a giant statue to honor the hero. She's really anxious and keeps saying that if she doesn't win, she'll never be a real nun. Someone called the woman's name in a formal voice from outside the door, and she heard a noise. She took a deep breath, regained her composure, and told him to come in with a steady voice. The girls arrived and said they had brought this week's donations, asking if they could hand them over. She thanked them for their help and quickly sent them off, adding that the spirits would reward them. Then, without wasting any time, she emptied the bag of coins and picked up one with her fingers. In that moment, she understood something important. She thought the statue wasn't shiny enough. If it looked brighter and more sparkling, she was sure spirits would be drawn to it, just like moths are attracted to a light. Next, she'll ask for the nearby spirit shelter to be taken down, so she can quickly remove that holy mother who's always getting in her way. So she'll be the owner of that land and become rich and powerful. She's already imagining having everything she ever wanted, and she believes her dreams will come true very soon. The nun gazed at the treasure chest sparkling with beautiful gems. She said sadly that her supporters had stopped sending money, and now she was almost out of cash to pay the monks. What inspired her to risk it all, her own safety, and the trust of those who relied on her in this safe place? On the table, there's a letter saying that if the debt isn't paid back in time, the great nun and 5 saints from this cathedral will be sent into slavery. The man wearing a hat congratulated the woman on getting such a great deal and told her it was a pleasure doing business with her. She had just received a huge chest. She found so many coins that she couldn't contain her excitement. She believed that now everyone in the pleasure district would know her name, and people would be amazed by the shining statue of the hero. The nun cheerfully tossed coins around the room, excited because King Wasvamp would attend the hero's statue unveiling tomorrow. She felt more sure than ever that she would win and knew great success was just ahead. The big day is here. It's time to find out who will win. Some people are saying it's time to choose which cathedral will be the real temple. Soon, everyone will start comparing the statues. So I promise King Wasvamp that he can count on me. The ruler started judging the statues. The first one, which is the biggest and stands at the Spring Cathedral, looks impressive from the front, but only the face seems well made. First of all, it matters how much she connects with the spirits of spring. The wise nun explained that they had already taken care of everything. When the cloth is finally taken off the statue, everyone will see who the true hero is. And then, the spirits will surely come rushing in and might even knock over the nearby statue in excitement. Suddenly, a younger nun stepped in, politely apologizing for interrupting. She explained that they had all worked hard as a team to create the statue. When she spoke, her rival laughed, not believing she could have made the statue with anyone else, since she was always alone. Hearing this made the girl feel sad. The king wanted to stop the women from arguing, so he told them that when he gave the signal, they would both uncover the statues at the same time. The girls prepared themselves. When the signal came, they pulled the covers off the sculptures and revealed them to everyone. You could already start to see the shapes of the statues. The king stared at them in surprise, unable to hide his shock. One of the statues at the ball is drenched in perfume. The surprise was so great that even the nun who built the huge statue couldn't help but scream. Vaswamp had no idea why, but suddenly understood that this sculpture was meant to honor the universe. The woman was surprised, so she politely asked him if he knew the teacher. Feeling a bit nervous and stumbling over his words, he said he didn't know the young man personally. Still, everyone the ruler met had only good things to say about him. The girl smiled with excitement and agreed that the king was right. She truly admired her teacher, who was an amazing person. Also, none of the spirits are as well known as the teacher. Even his statue draws crowds of curious creatures just because it looks like him. The king listened carefully to the lady and said he understood her. He noticed that all the spirits were smiling in the same way as Princess Typhon did. At that moment, the wicked nun tried to make everyone doubt the good nun. She claimed it was all made up and said that spirits would never appear to a statue honoring a false hero. She kept insisting that she was not lying and explained her side of the story. She said she managed to control the spirits and call them because there's no other way so many could appear. She felt what she did was wrong and believed the spirits would now dislike her and never return. Suddenly, a strong wind blew and everyone stopped in their tracks, worried about what might happen next. The wise nun paused and listened carefully, sensing something important was about to happen. But then she got an idea and smirked. As she started her act, she told everyone to look at the forest, saying it was weeping because spring was angry. Right then, a bunch of spirits suddenly floated out. There were so many that everyone at the statue's big unveiling stopped and stared. The nun shouted with happiness as she saw the spirits flying toward her hero's statue, believing that everything happening was now hers to claim. As the show was wrapping up, she called out for the spirits to prepare themselves. She gave the order to destroy the statue of the so-called hero universe. Then, she pointed towards the enemy's building, sending a swarm of spirits racing in that direction. But instead of following her instructions, they did the exact opposite. They put all their strength into pushing the statue of Brabin, and it toppled over with a loud crash. Overcome with rage, the woman shouted loudly, clutching her head and insisting that they were targeting the wrong statue. She kept shouting at them to stop, saying it again and again, but they didn't listen. She screamed and begged for help, but no one came as the statue kept breaking apart. She suddenly saw her dreams slipping away, right in front of her. Chunks of rock crashed down to the ground and hit one of the buildings, breaking apart as they landed. The building started to fall apart, and the loud noise made people from nearby houses rush outside in a panic. The woman stared in shock as everything fell apart. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. In the end, everything collapsed, and all the buildings turned to dust, leaving nothing but ruins behind. At that moment, a few nuns came up to the Holy Mother and knelt before her. They started to pray, admitting they had made a big mistake. They asked for her forgiveness and begged to be allowed back into her spiritual sanctuary. She smiled and said everyone was welcome to come back anytime. So, she suggested living peacefully with the spring spirits, just as the teachings of the universe advise. They all agreed right away, but then another respected woman stepped in and stopped them. She swayed back and forth, yelling angrily that she would not let them take her nuns away. She got even crueler, threatening to sell her into slavery and abandon her completely. Suddenly, someone showed up and told us this was the right place to be. 3 people showed up carrying ropes and shackles. The man in black led them. He started asking about the saint, who supposedly owed him a large amount of money. The woman who had just been shouting started pointing to other girls, saying they were the ones needed, and telling them to help clean up the Holy Mother as well. The man said he had many beautiful women at home, and he hoped they would all get along so he could make a lot of money. He reassured the women, telling them not to be scared and that they would enjoy being there. Just then, someone suggested there was no need to rush. The leader turned back, clearly thinking that person should keep quiet. It was King Waswamp. In a strong, firm voice, he ordered them not to touch the girls. The men were completely shocked to see the king there, and even more surprised that he was protecting the girls. They nervously asked him why he was there, but he didn't reply. Instead, he firmly asked them what they were up to, and more importantly, why they wanted to take those people away. The dark man tried to flatter the king, calling him, "Your Royal Majesty." He handed over a paper showing that all the great cathedrals had been used as collateral. The ruler looked over the agreement and agreed that everything matched what was written. However, the saints mentioned here belong to the spirit house, not the cathedral, so they aren't really connected to this will. The man started to feel anxious and tried to figure things out. If this isn't the right saint, then where is the one he needs? His eyes landed on the second Holy Mother. He spoke up, surprised to see that it was an older woman instead of who he expected. Feeling let down, he gave up and accepted whatever would happen next, while the other 2 just prepared to take her along. The woman, shocked by what was happening, tried to protest. She was locked in a cage on wheels, and the man spoke to her rudely, calling her an old lady. He told her she would have to repay the money she owed, no matter what it took, and that they didn't care how much she suffered as long as she paid for her mistake. Everyone stood and watched as the carriage rolled off, carrying the woman away. Finally, the king looked at the Holy Mother and admitted that even though he hadn't spoken yet, it was clear she was winning the contest. The young woman smiled with joy and thanked the king for his words. After that, everyone followed Wasvamp to the spirit haven. He was really impressed, saying the place looked beautiful and had a nice, simple vibe. He mentioned he would actually enjoy spending a few days here. Meanwhile, Typhon and Universe kept an eye on the half-open door. The man quietly told his companion that he had a message to deliver. After a short pause, he leaned closer to her and whispered that they were being followed for a reason, so they needed to find a way to escape. The lady burst out laughing at his joke, finding it really funny. Universe gently asked her to quiet her down. Then, she decided to ask the Holy Mother, who was waiting just outside the door, to come in. The girl told the nun they were about to leave and admitted they were on their honeymoon and planned to keep traveling together. The young man was surprised to hear her say that. The woman laughed and said she already had a feeling they were more than just friends, and the princess, smiling, admitted that it was true. The dark-haired girl wished to feel a special bond with the spirits of spring. She wanted to be kind and gentle, just like them, and to build deep trust with everyone around her. She paused for a moment, smiled at her screen, and confidently typed back that she was certain the second attempt would work. The girl wondered how the universe felt about it, but the universe just smiled without saying a word. He noticed that the spirits were already connected to the Holy Mother, and the princess saw this as well and understood what was happening. The creatures gently hugged the girl as she stood there, confused about why her teacher wasn't answering her question. The nun watched her guests leave in a carriage and waved goodbye, looking a little sad as they continued their journey. Two young girls walked up to her, smiling brightly. The spirits soared around, their wings fluttering with happiness. The universe glanced their way and offered a quiet, gentle smile. He felt glad for her because she had found real friends, not just people to talk to. She was truly happy. After driving for a while, they took a break. The man told them they were close to the kingdom's capital, and after that, things would start to get interesting. He pointed out that their route goes through the capital, but there's a good chance wanted posters with their faces are everywhere. Since it's crowded, they should be extra cautious. The girl suggested they wear disguises to avoid getting caught. Almost like magic, the princess appeared in a clever disguise. She wore a hat, glasses, and a mask. She mentioned that her ears felt blocked. The guy looked at her and said her outfit was pretty unusual. She soon understood it was a good idea to switch up her look, so this time she dressed as a lively dancer in bright, colorful clothes. She then turned to her friend and asked if she looked like a real dancer. She explained that you could actually hear music coming from the city far away. And don't forget, Universe, the big festival to celebrate the heroes, is happening right now. He decided which way to go and told Typhon. The girl was so happy that she said it was time to get moving. The young man asked her to slow down. Curious and a bit confused, the girl wanted to know why they shouldn't rush. He told her that if she started dancing, people would notice them and they might get caught. Then, he wondered why she was in disguise in the first place. The girl frowned and quietly said he should change his clothes as well. She argued that it would look strange to see a girl dancing next to a guy wearing an ordinary work shirt. To convince Universe even more, she said that if their faces were on posters everywhere, everyone would realize that place was closed too. The princess wasn't really worried about getting caught. She mostly just wanted to see the guy she liked wearing new clothes, so she gave him a sly smile and glanced his way. She cheerfully told him to get changed while she started choosing clothes for him. Universe nodded quietly in agreement. Typhon felt really good about herself, and joking around, she asked where awesome people like her usually hang out. She gave Mr. Universe a makeover, turning him into a trendy trumpet player. The guy felt awkward in his outfit and thought it looked too showy. The girl told him that this style was actually really trendy right now. Then she explained her idea. He would play the trumpet while she danced, even though it sounded a bit unusual. She tried to rush him so it wouldn't look suspicious, but he just called out her name loudly instead. He told her not to even think about dancing. They arrived in the kingdom of Wasfampu, right in the heart of its capital. The city was buzzing with excitement. The dance competition was in full swing, celebrating the festival that honored the kingdom's heroes. She was so excited when they arrived in the city that she shouted with happiness and said how amazing it felt to be there. Typhon, in a playful mood, invited her friend to join her for a dance. Universe quickly noticed that she wasn't paying any attention to what he was saying. Meanwhile, everyone started to notice the girl dancing on the carriage. People began to say she looked really cool and was actually a pretty good dancer. They began cheering for her, calling her the best, as the man drove the carriage. Then he noticed the wanted posters and started to panic. The stranger stared at the man who was crying, glanced at a cart going by, and then looked right at Universe, making him feel uneasy. He got scared that if people found out, things could go really wrong. Luckily, everything turned out great. The man complimented the girl, called her beautiful, and encouraged her to keep going just like that. The young man let out a sigh of relief, realizing he had nearly been discovered. Then the princess peeked in and invited him to dance, but he told her he didn't know how. To add to his answer, he tells her to look around. Wanted posters with their faces are everywhere on the streets. The girl, clearly surprised, asks if it's really him, since the person on the sign looks nothing like him, almost like a totally different person. The universe gets confused and asks if that's true. The girl nods and says he actually looks more like Brabant in the picture. Typhon firmly says she won't let this go and plans to get out of the car to take down all the posters herself, but the young man quickly stops her. He tells her that if she takes down the wanted posters, she could get in serious trouble since it's actually a crime. He admits she can dance if she wants, but warns her not to mess with the posters. The girl agrees with the guy, but she gently tells him they don't need to drive down those tough streets so often. She thinks it's safer to stay out of sight sometimes, so they won't attract any unwanted attention. She climbs back onto the roof, ready to start dancing. He watches the princess run upstairs, smiles to himself, and quietly says that if that's what she wants, then that's what he'll do. The festival was buzzing with excitement in the main square. someone stepped up to kick off the big event celebrating the heroes. The announcer told everyone that the top dancers were ready to perform and invited anyone who wanted to join them on stage. He went on to explain that the winning team would get a prize, and Universe couldn't help but think that people in the capital really loved dancing. The first contestant stepped onto the stage, ready to begin. The host told the girl on stage that she was adorable and said that everyone else agreed. He also mentioned that she had already won in the looks department, hoping to make her feel better. But then Universe noticed Typhon was also on stage and realized things were getting out of hand. She started her speech by mentioning that she's not just sweet and beautiful, but also a talented dancer. She added that she feels sure she'll win the dance competition. The speaker was surprised by what she said, so he called her brave for considering herself a winner. The audience cheered and felt excited. He said he wanted to watch her dance, so he needed to get his musicians. She was confused and asked what musicians he was talking about. He quickly replies, almost as if he's reading from a script, that dancing isn't possible without music, since every dancer needs music to help guide them. Musicians create amazing music with modern electronic instruments. Young people especially love this activity. Feeling sad, Typhon stepped down from the stage. Her friend called out to her, using her name. She answered him softly, her voice full of sadness. She decided to ask him for advice on what to do. She had heard that they needed someone to play an instrument for the dance competition, so she wanted to figure out how she could help. The girl told Universe-kun that her biggest dream was to dance with people from outside, and she hoped she could do it after marrying the hero. But sadly, he never allowed her to. With tears in her eyes, she told him she really wanted to dance in front of everyone today, and asked if he could help make it happen. The young man discovered that the wind spirits loved to dance, but Typhon, being a princess, believed she wasn't allowed to join them. Despite this, he took her to the world's greatest city for dancing and told her she could not dance. Then he called her by her name. He confidently told her that it didn't matter if he knew how to play electronic instruments. He said he would do whatever was needed and promised to bring her on stage no matter what. His words made her so happy and moved her heart. Right away, she rushed off to say she wanted to join. When she came back, she said they had asked her to return later. The young man nodded, saying he understood. He seemed lost in thought, and Tafona suddenly felt a wave of sadness. He said sorry for making her worry, but the girl told him it was no big deal. Then, wanting to lift her spirits, Universe promised he would never give up, especially for the sake of the spirits. She paused for a second, then smiled and said his words felt so genuine, very different from the empty promises of the hero. It was like she truly trusted her friend. A true hero never gives up and does whatever it takes to become known everywhere. That's why he wanted Typhon to give up everything she had and make every sacrifice for him. Also, while one hero tries to be the best at everything, and Mr. Universe-kun stands out in his own way, the spirits will pick you as their master because you're totally different from them both. The girl remembered that her date once asked her to dance for him. She wanted to sit down, but before the young man could warn her not to, she sat down anyway. Suddenly, she jumped up and cried out in pain from something sharp. The boy and girl were curious, so they went to check it out. They found an old gramophone there. The universe gave this device a high rating, saying it's solid, reliable, and built to last, so you can count on it to work well. He read the label, which mentioned that the item was designed for duels. Suddenly, something responded to these words. A voice came from the device. It turned out these were tree spirits. They asked the couple if they had ever heard of doodle. The man said he knew about it because he was a woodworker and often worked with sound. The spirits were surprised and said that in the past, many people used to dance to this, but now young people prefer listening to music from metal boxes. Then the young man suggested they play their music again for the group. The musicians happily agreed, saying they'd love to do it just for him. However, they wondered if he was just a beginner, because the younger players didn't give him any chance to show what he could do. But the man told them it wasn't true. He simply hoped the girl would perform on stage one more time. The Typhons noticed these spirits and thought they looked really cute. She also said she's excited to dance to their music. She politely invited them to join her on the dance floor, saying it would be really fun. They hesitated for a moment, thinking it over. In the end, they all agreed because the girl had kindly invited her to join them. The universe cleaned off the gramophone, and just then, a man walked in and called Typhona to the stage, telling her to prepare. The announcer told everyone that the dance competition was almost over and the final team of wind dancers was about to perform. The audience clapped and cheered as they stepped onto the stage. At the same time, a guy and a girl walked onto the stage, carefully carrying a gramophone and counting their steps. The audience stared, puzzled about what this strange object was. Then one of the guests explained, "That's a gramophone. My dad had one when I was a kid." People everywhere were surprised when they saw the device was so old. Some even said that a girl like her should be playing a synthesizer instead. Then, Phone suddenly grabbed the microphone from the host and started talking. She wrapped up the conversation by saying, "No need for this talk. Let's just let everyone enjoy it. After all, it's going to be an amazing show with the famous DJ Universe performing." The crowd got even noisier, shouting that they had never heard of anything like that before. Meanwhile, the guy at the record player was starting to get really anxious. But the spirits tried to lift his mood, saying he shouldn't worry because they'd handle everything. They were there to enjoy themselves too. He smiled and Typhon smiled back, thanking him sincerely. This was the moment she had been waiting for, and it meant the world to her. But the universe replied that it was too soon to celebrate, as this was only the beginning, and so they began to count.